A notification screen popped up with the text Tower of Trials. The floor 100 trial is loading, and along with it, a few angels appear. Below them is the silhouette of a man, carrying a judgment scythe. You really are as stubborn as a leech, but struggling is useless. Just warning you ahead of time. Below them is the silhouette of a man, carrying a judgment scythe. You really are as stubborn as a leech, but struggling is useless. Just warning you ahead of time. Below them is the silhouette of a man, carrying a judgment scythe. You really are as stubborn as a leech, but struggling is useless. Just warning you ahead of time. What's the point of the player ranking war anyway? Jinnu God is going to take first place regardless. I heard Jinnu was a free-to-play player. How the hell is he that good? As expected, the level of the absolute number 1, Jinnu God, is just different. Word is he broke the time attack record in the daily dungeon again. Is Jinnu God hacking the game? How can anyone clear the chaotic magic dragon in just 47 seconds? Don't disrespect him. At this rate, it might be faster to just become one of Jinnu God's summons. There, I set transcendent records and became a legend in the game. A few comments from the 1 Heaven 5 Emperors popped up on the screen. A player has conquered up to floor 70 of the Tower of Trials. White Heaven, hey, is Big Bro Jinnu busy? He must be busy conquering floor 99, right? Reading this, Jinnu couldn't help but mutter to himself. I already cleared floor 99, though. What's going on? Is there a problem? Jinnu murmured to himself. That's right, Jinnu was a figure who made the top players bow their heads in respect. But sorry, I'm busy right now. A somewhat bitter smile played on his face at this moment. Just one last clear and I'm deleting this game. A somewhat bitter smile played on his face at this moment. Just one last clear and I'm deleting this game. Being addicted to gaming for 10 years to the point of dropping out of college, he didn't even have a stable job like everyone else. On the outside, his parents didn't say anything, but deep down, they must have been heartbroken. So I decided to scrap this trash game and get my life together. I'm already 24 years old, I need to live a proper life. So, with the goal of turning his life around, Jinnu's gaze grew serious as he prepared to give Jinnu God a perfect send-off. The angels up high were preparing a coordinated attack. I'll just beat this last stage and delete the game right away. At this moment, Jinnu finally prepared to counterattack. The summon panel, a list of his summons, appeared. Inventory, the 1 Heaven 5 Emperors kept discussing on the side. A player has conquered up to floor 70 of the Tower of Trials. White Heaven, looks like Big Bro is really busy. 1 Heaven 5 Emperors, the rank 2 player Rachel, she usually doesn't look at the summon panel, let's just wait a bit and see. The summon being used was his ultimate move, White Whale, accompanied by a system notification, White Whale has been summoned. The comments section continued to buzz with chatter. 1 Heaven 5 Emperors, rank 2 player Rachel. But if he clears floor 100 this time, the angels will launch another attack. Below is a comment from 1 Heaven 5 Emperors, rank 2 player Rachel. It's been exactly 10 years, right? Jinnu focused entirely on the battle ahead, quickly raising a wall to block those attacks. Jinnu's face looked incredibly tense, and the comments section grew rowdier by the minute. 1 Heaven 5 Emperors, Jinnu God has really gone insane, this is insane. Great, I couldn't quit this game because I wanted to watch floor 100 get cleared. Meanwhile, the angels relentlessly kept launching attacks. Jinnu's face didn't show any emotion. However, every single move was executed with absolute precision. On his end, Jinnu was still using the White Whale summon, a look of confidence now washing over his face. The comments section continued to stream more lines of text. 1 Heaven 5 Emperors, Gri, he truly lives up to the name Jinnu God, the player who conquered up to floor 70 of the White Heaven Tower of Trials. But a sudden light appearing from behind made Jinnu turn his head. Has everyone read the notification board yet? In front of him right now was a massive monster. 1 Heaven 5 Emperors Moscow. Clearing floor 100 will open up a new world? It attacked almost instantly. Jinnu's eyes widened in shock. Yet, he still agilely summoned the Azure Dragon. As soon as the Azure Dragon appeared, it used its water element ability to clash against the monster. Meanwhile, the people on the outside were still discussing the battle. 1 Heaven 5 Emperors, the player who conquered up to floor 70 of the Tower of Trials. White Heaven, the game structure is going to change? What does that mean? 1 Heaven 5 Emperors, Rank 2 player, Rachel, that was probably just written for fun. Even the devs probably didn't think anyone could clear floor 100. In an instant, space itself was violently distorted. Jinwoo's eyes widened as he witnessed the massive scale of the battle. 1 Heaven 5 Emperors, the player who conquered up to floor 70 of the Tower of Trials. White Heaven, what if the world actually changes for real? A declaration was made along with it, and reality transformed into the world of summoners. In the very next second, a catastrophic explosion erupted. Jinwoo's screen displayed the text, Tower of Trials floor 100 successfully cleared. Unable to contain his excitement, Jinwoo shouted at the top of his lungs, I beat it. Passers-by couldn't help but look at him with judgment in their eyes. It was finally a success, and they even muttered, what's wrong with him? He must be crazy. However, only Jinwoo truly understood. Lord Jinwoo had finally conquered all 100 floors. Now, goodbye to this game. He started wanting to flex. Nice, before deleting the game, I definitely have to flex on the other players. To his surprise, the people around him suddenly wore expressions of pure shock. Then, Jinwoo's attention was also grabbed by a blinding light. In the sky right now was a massive announcement board, Tower of Trials floor 100 successfully cleared. Everyone present couldn't help but cry out, what on earth is that? The next notification read, end of beta test. Jinwoo began to panic. Why is the in-game screen appearing out there? Following the notification, a flurry of red papers began to flutter down. A few people quickly snatched them up. What is this? A notification appeared, please tear the summoning scroll. They only felt intrigued by what was happening, or maybe it was some kind of event. Let's try tearing it. And then they immediately tore the red paper apart. Jinwoo, standing nearby, didn't have time to stop them. Don't do it. If you tear it. The red paper was ripped clean in half. It instantly exploded, causing the user to jump back in shock. Another notification appeared, a new world has opened. Jinwoo was so horrified that his face went completely pale witnessing this scene. A horde of monsters swarmed in out of nowhere, and while he was still busy muttering to himself, a car almost hit him. This can't be happening. Only when a bright light flashed from behind did Jinwoo realize something was terribly wrong. A chaotic noise rang out, followed by the sheer panic of the surrounding crowd. They surrounded Jinwoo and shouted loudly, someone got hit by a car here, somebody help him. He lay on the ground completely alone, his head bleeding profusely. 911, hurry and call 911. In his heart, Jinwoo was thinking, God damn it, this piece of shit game. The phone on the ground had long since shattered. Who knows how much time had passed, but the sound of the news broadcast echoed in the hospital room. In other news, amidst the official kickoff of the International Player League, South Korea once again left behind a disappointing result, sitting at the bottom of the rankings. Jinwoo's hand twitched slightly at this moment. Regarding this, the association asserts the need to mobilize more high-ranking summons, but some experts argue that the national budget is insufficient to cover those costs. This startled his mother. She nearly dropped the knife she was holding onto the floor. Honey, go get the doctor right now. Her voice was filled with pure relief. Jinwoo was awake. The sky outside was still strangely clear and blue. Inside the hospital room, Jinwoo's father and mother were explaining everything that had happened. His eyes widened in absolute shock. As soon as I woke up, I was hit with mind-blowing news. First, 3 years had already passed since the day of my accident. Second, the in-game scenery transforming into reality that I saw before passing out was real. The door swung open and a pebble golem walked in. This was his dad's summon, Pebble Golem. Only now could Jinwoo fully confirm that this was not a dream. Jinwoo's dad continued to explain, it helps me stack goods at the express courier warehouse, it gets the job done. He stared at it blankly. That E-rank summon belongs to Dad? And the third shocker. The TV was broadcasting a news segment about Rachel. In light of this situation, players around the world collectively assert, to conquer the Tower of Trials, we must find South Korea's Jinwoo at all costs. This statement sparked a massive wave of questioning among the public. Rachel, the rank 1 player in the world, stated, our 5 emperors have always been waiting for him. If he appears, that will be the moment the world shakes once again. The truth was that the entire world was searching for Jinwoo, who was none other than himself. He looked at the image of the girl being shown on the TV and thought to himself, plus, that name is unmistakable. He confidently identified her identity as Rachel of the 1 Heaven 5 Emperors. Would you like to start the tutorial?
yes/no?
Jinu's mom suddenly spoke up. Jinu, I know you're very overwhelmed, you don't need to start the tutorial right away, just rest up first. However, he quickly waved it off.
No, Mom.
He flashed a smile and explained further.
I need to adapt quickly too.
My body feels much better, so don't worry, Mom. Meanwhile, his mind had already calculated everything clearly. Even though he had nothing to his name right now and didn't know how the world had changed, how hard could it be? When it came to this game, he was confident he could climb right back to the top of the world. What happened after that was incredibly straightforward. After being discharged from the hospital and returning home, Jinu was now sitting in front of a monitor. I began researching this world, where the game BOS had become a reality. The searched information covered everything from duels and dungeon expeditions to the Tower of Trials. Every system within the game had now manifested right in the real world. He then concluded that now that 3 years had passed, people seemed to have gradually adapted to coexisting with summons. Jinu muttered to himself as he stood up from his chair, even so, there's no way they understand them as thoroughly as I do.
And then he eagerly operated the system interface. Well then, it's about time. A barrage of notifications kept popping up. Would you like to open your inventory? Empty. Shall we begin? The tutorial phase is now beginning.
Very quickly, Jinu moved to a different location.
Just as I calculated, I knew there wouldn't be anyone around here.
To think I'd have to seek out a deserted place like this, simply because I can't predict what kind of summon will appear.
A series of tutorial prompts appeared one after another. Tutorial reward, low-grade summoning scroll X2. Warning, outdoor use is highly recommended.
Jinu looked at the red paper in his hand and could only sigh.
Now everything felt completely real.
He muttered to himself, please.
Just let me summon something decent.
Because even for me, Baek Jinu, the man known as One Heaven, if I have to start with trash summons, I'm completely finished.
However, BOS was a notoriously cursed gacha game with an utterly abysmal drop rate.
The stats could be summarized as follows: low-grade summoning scroll, D rank 1%, E rank 5%, F rank 94%. The ranks span from S to F with an extremely low success rate. And from this low-grade summoning scroll, you have to beat a 1% RNG just to get a D rank item. He didn't rush to tear it, but instead started praying. God, please, please. I beg of you, give me something halfway usable. Jinu's face looked dead serious.
Forget D rank, I'd be perfectly satisfied even if I get an E rank item. As long as it's a useful E rank. Finally, he went ahead and tore the paper.
Please, a system notification appeared. Using low-grade summoning scroll.
Jinu cautiously read the text, his mind constantly wondering, will it succeed? Come to think of it, how exactly do the summoned entities appear?
To his surprise, the paper suddenly exploded at that exact moment.
This caught Jinu completely off guard. What the hell is this?
Lines of system information began to materialize.
Player Baek Jinu has obtained the EX rank summon, Wind Spirit.
A golden light along with Jamba was what he received.
Jinu's eyes widened in pure disbelief as he muttered, EX rank? A rank like that actually exists?
On the other side, she was lazily rubbing her eyes.
She cried out in utter shock, what on earth?
Then she excitedly looked at the person in front of her. Oh my god, did I really just get summoned?
This is insane. How long has it been since this last happened?
Jinu, on his end, was constantly questioning himself.
What is this? How can a summon talk? However, he quickly figured it out. After a brief pause, a name slipped from Jinu's lips. Are you Ramba? Ramba hastily corrected him. No, I am a wind spirit. But she quickly realized it too. Wait, what? The only person who ever called me by that name, could it be? Ramba's face gradually grew more and more ecstatic. Don't tell me, are you Jinu God?
She then threw herself at Jinu in a burst of excitement.
Jinu God, do you have any idea how much I've missed you?
Jinu only replied softly, of course I do. In his heart, he was rapidly calculating, I remember now.
The E-rank summon, Wind Spirit.
Not to mention, if one knew how to exploit the hidden mechanics and equip the right type of ancient runes, the result of that would turn her into a god-tier unit with the ability to increase attack speed exponentially. Since we had been stuck together for a very long time back when I was a rookie, I even gave her the nickname Ramba.
Wasn't she deleted from the game in a patch during the first year, though? He looked at the status screen in front of him and thought, what was the reason again? Was her use restricted because they discovered an exploit that caused a severe balance disruption? Do you know how pissed off I was when they deleted the summon I spent a whole year raising? What the hell is going on here?
The information itself read, Summon Wind Spirit Level 1, Fairy Race, S-Rank currently quarantined. Quarantined due to the discovery of balance-breaking elements under specific conditions. Possess skill, wind pressure increases attack speed by 3% for a single summon target after every staff swing. Jinu's eyes widened, his mind muttering, quarantine status. At this moment, Ramba began to explain through flooding tears. Suddenly I was dragged to a very strange place. I was locked up and couldn't even escape. Let's never separate again, okay, Jinu God? Instead of showing pity, Jino roughly pushed her away. Hold on a second, Ramba. He voiced a question. Locked up? Who quarantined you? Only then did Ramba realize her slip of the tongue. Well, what was it again? Only then did Ramba realize her slip of the tongue. Well, what was it again? Ramba looked like she had a headache. Ouch. It hurts. My head hurts so much I can't remember anything at all. Some bastard definitely placed a restriction on her. Seeing this, Jinu asked back, really? Then just tell me whatever you do remember. She could only reply seriously, I'm sorry, but I can't reveal much to you. We were quarantined. Originally, no matter how hard players tried to summon us, we couldn't leave. To his surprise, these words left him even more perplexed. By we, do you mean there are other summons besides you who were also quarantined? Ramba shared sincerely, since we weren't locked in the same room, I don't know who they are, but there are definitely many others. A deduction was then made by Jinu, maybe around 10 entities? 10 entities. If it really was 10 entities, he couldn't believe his eyes as he thought, holy shit, no way. Because the truth was that 10 summons had vanished after being flagged as a bug while he was using them. He began to calculate everything. If all those summons were classified as EX rank and quarantined. Ramba chimed in with a comment, I don't know the details very well either. But anyway, Jinagad, it looks like we'll get a chance every time you tear a summoning scroll. It's been a really long time since I felt the call from a low-grade summoning scroll. Looking at the red paper on the ground, Jinna thought to himself, isn't this pretty interesting? Furthermore, do they only react to the scrolls that I tear? His expression grew more serious. There's no doubt about it, I'm the only one who can summon EX rank items. And then he wondered, could this be an exclusive privilege for the person who conquered floor 100 of the Tower of Trials? Jinno quickly tore the remaining scroll. Using low-grade summoning scroll. As he did it, he muttered to himself, could it be that every low-grade summoning scroll I tear is set to drop an EX rank item? The summon quickly materialized. Player Beck Jinnu has obtained the F-rank summon, Hairy Gorilla. Jinnu couldn't help but feel disappointed. Guess not. Meanwhile, Ramba was visibly delighted. Look, a little gorilla. He thought to himself, F-rank? Meaning the drop rate for EX rank items is also completely random. This piece of shit, garbage RNG game. And then he calculated carefully. So as expected, I'll need to tear as many summoning scrolls as possible to increase the rate of getting EX rank items. So as expected, I'll need to tear as many summoning scrolls as possible to increase the rate of getting EX rank items. Once the goal was set, he finally spoke up, Ramba. She quickly turned her head and replied, Jinugad. A comment was then made, from now on, drop the name Ju. Just call me Jinu. Ramba asked back, confused, why? He didn't rush to explain but only thought to himself, because thanks to the 5 emperors, the name Ju was already famous across the world. The risks were being listed out. No matter how superior my knowledge and experience are, I still can't know how disadvantageous this 3-year gap will be for me. Jinu himself understood perfectly well that if the information that he held EX rank items leaked out, I'll only become a target of envy and jealousy. A loud noise echoed through the forest, causing some birds to fly away. Jinu couldn't help but feel surprised either. What was that? Why all of a sudden? Both Ramba and the gorilla were equally shocked. What? A notification appeared in front of Jinu, advancing to the next phase. The information was quickly clarified. The basic dungeon for beginners has been initialized. Looking at the gate that suddenly appeared, Jinu muttered with a look of surprise, what? Right now? His hands clenched in hesitation. Oh crap,
do I really have to go in there? True, I've conquered countless dungeons before. But, Jinwoo quickly concluded, reality is a far cry from the game. His teeth clenched together. No, I need to calm down first. Honestly, I'm terrified, but I won't have to fight directly. And more importantly, this is just a tutorial dungeon. And then Jinwoo turned his head back toward the gate. Player Beck Jinwoo. Now a system notification appeared, please step inside. The three of them proceeded inside just like that. I need to adapt to this altered reality. Jinwoo's face couldn't hide his astonishment. His surrounding environment changed in the blink of an eye. I just stepped inside a dungeon. Why does it feel a bit creepy in here? A system notification appeared. Player Beck Jinwoo, you have entered the beginner dungeon. Jinwoo read it cautiously and calculated in his head, so it has begun. The rule of operation was, to engage in combat within the dungeon, you must form a summon team. A second notification popped up. The maximum number of summons per team is 5. Below it was a choice. Do you want to assign S-rank Wind Spirit and F-rank Hairy Gorilla to Team 1? Yes/no? At this moment, Jinwoo calculated silently. Normally, to increase the chances of successfully clearing a dungeon, people would fill up their lineup with all 5 summon slots. He remembered back when he played the game, bringing only 2 summons seemed reckless, but with the right strategy, it was entirely possible. Then reflecting on what had happened, I've run simulations of this thousands, tens of thousands of times already. In his heart, Jinwoo was calculating, the entire clear process was already memorized perfectly in my head. The choices listed were S-rank Wind Spirit and F-rank Hairy Gorilla. Now they will be automatically summoned. He furrowed his brows, evaluating in his mind. Let's see, the monsters in the tutorial dungeon will definitely be. To his surprise, Jinwoo's eyes snapped open wide when he heard a growl echoing from behind. A system notification appeared. A starved gray wolf is lurking nearby. Defeat the wolf and escape the cave. His expression grew more serious. F-rank Gray Wolf. His feet then began to emit glows of golden light. It turned into a protective barrier for Jinwoo. A protective barrier has been generated for the player. He continued to calculate cautiously, so the player protection system from bosses is perfectly applied. But since this is reality, suddenly, a red notification appeared again. Warning, you will die if you are attacked by a summon without an active protective barrier. If I fail, it won't just end with a game over text. The gray wolf wore a menacing expression and slowly advanced forward. At this moment, Jinwoo finally ordered, Gorilla. However, the way it moved left him incredibly disappointed. Jinwoo went pale as he made a comment, he's too slow. However, that didn't affect his mood for too long. But I already anticipated this much. Ramba, she took the order and dashed forward. Here, the skill used was wind pressure, swinging the staff to increase the summon's attack speed. The gorilla was quickly buffed. It was temporarily dazed by this, but quickly regained its momentum and powerfully charged forward. On the side, Jinwoo commented shiftingly, awesome, that's my Ramba. The gray wolf also aggressively lunged forward. In his heart, Jinwoo was thinking, was that thing that big in the game too? It looks way scarier in person. He was confident in his lineup. There's no way the hairy gorilla actually loses, right? Jinwoo's train of thought continued according to the data he knew. That was completely impossible. But however, he also cautiously weighed other possibilities. What if there's a 1 in a million chance that reality throws an unforeseen twist at me? A bloody scene unfolded before his eyes as the gray wolf managed to bite into the gorilla. It lost its balance just like that and fell down. Jinwoo immediately cried out, Ramba. She shouted back, ouch, I already swung it as hard as I could. Wind wrapped around and reinforced the gorilla's attack. The tide of battle was turned in just a single punch. The gray wolf rolled over onto the ground. Jinwoo, waiting for exactly that, immediately ordered, that's it. Ramba quickly delivered the follow-up blow. The gorilla, under her support, grew even more powerful. It punched the gray wolf straight in the body, followed by a relentless barrage of punches. The surrounding space was reduced to nothing but a blanket of white dust. Jinwoo and Ramba both widened their eyes in disbelief as they witnessed this scene. They stared at the dead gray wolf lying motionless on the ground. Only now did the gorilla let out a roar, while Ramba excitedly cheered, we won. A flood of system notifications appeared simultaneously. Dungeon clear. Reward, low-grade strength elixir X2. Only now did Jinwoo feel somewhat relieved. I'm alive. As the afternoon wore on, a voice rang out with great delight, thanks. See you next time. A few bills were tucked inside an envelope.
It was Ah Jin's pure excitement.
This is amazing. I just made 200,001 today, didn't I?
She was none other than Ah Jin, Jinu's younger sister. Speaking of which, 3 years ago when the world changed, I also got myself a new job as a rune farmer player, mainly running low-level dungeons. My job is to make a profit by selling runes to prospective players. My job is to make a profit by selling runes to prospective players. Ah Jin's train of thought continued. After my brother met with an accident and our family's financial situation became difficult, I decided to become a player, which felt like a miracle. While running a dungeon, an intermediate summoner's skill book dropped. And from that book, with a mere 1% drop rate, I obtained a C-rank summon. She glanced slightly at the bag slung over her shoulder. I've been really lucky.
Thanks to this C-rank night elf, I've been able to make a steady income by farming runes.
The phone rang, and the caller was none other than her brother, Jinu.
Is Big Bro calling? Ah Jin quickly picked up.
Hello, Big Bro.
Did you get discharged from the hospital already?
Jinu's urgent voice echoed from the other end of the line.
Yeah. I'm out. But Ah Jin, Dad told me you're selling runes?
This comment made her a bit indignant.
Selling runes?
Please call me a rune farmer player.
How could you use such a crude word? That shout forced Jinu to quickly placate her. You scared me. Okay, fine. A rune farmer. Anyway, do you know where the integration center is? Dad said you know. Hearing this, Ah Jin couldn't help but be surprised. The integration center?
That, she explained in a soft voice, of course it's located in the player zone.
The truth is, when the towers of trials appeared all over the world,
people needed a space to manage everything related to their summons.
That's how the player zones were born.
Not to mention that there are not only various dungeons but also integration centers, enhancement centers, and many other facilities. Everything can now be settled right around the tower.
The two of them quickly arranged to meet up at a cafe.
Ah Jin furrowed her brows, starting the conversation. You know about how Jamsil Tower and Houndy Tower have turned into towers of trials, right? She explained at a steady pace. Depending on each country, the situation is very different.
But in South Korea, the towers of trials only appeared in those two locations.
Therefore, the player zones you are looking for are only found there as well.
Hearing this, Jinu replied, I see. However, his face remained pensive.
Even so, if these facilities are meant to serve the conquering of the Tower of Trials, it makes perfect sense for them to be built nearby. Ah Jin suddenly shifted the topic to something else.
By the way, Big Bro, what rank summon did you get earlier? An E rank? Jinu calmly replied, an E rank and an F rank.
Hearing this, she couldn't help but feel surprised.
Really? An E rank has a spawn rate of only about 5%, you know. However, he was somewhat evasive. Is that so? I guess I just got lucky. Sorry, little sis, that was just a lie.
A favor was voiced right after.
Anyway, I'll need you to give me a hand. I want to adapt to the system as fast as possible, too. He didn't forget to make a promise. I'll give you some pocket money later. Ah Jin mockingly asked back, even though I make way more money than you, Big Bro?
Jinu only replied smoothly, little sis, you can't predict what the future holds.
Who knows? Maybe I'll become the greatest player in the world. But she completely doubted it. Keep dreaming.
Ah Jin continued to add, talking big about becoming the next Rachel or Genos is easy.
Bro, people like that are the chosen ones.
Her words carried a tone of reminder.
They are all geniuses. People like us can't become like them. Jinu only replied softly, is that so?
Next, he stood up while asking for her help. I get it.
So please lead the way for me.
A thrill-filled smile played on Jinu's face at this moment.
He wanted to see with his own eyes what a player zone looked like.
The place they were heading to was a highly modern building. The building they were heading toward was incredibly prominent. Along the way, Jinu couldn't help but feel curious.
Appa, you said you just pulled a summon. What did you get?
Jinu calmly replied without skipping a beat, a wind spirit.
Hearing this, she grew even more curious and asked back, a wind spirit? I've never heard of that before. Show me. However, he flatly refused. What? In your dreams. Why do you want to see it anyway?
This dismissive attitude annoyed Ajin.
Cheapskate. Why not?
It's not like you're showing a stranger, it doesn't cost you anything.
Hearing this, Jinwoo threw out an offer, then show me yours first. Ajin couldn't help but feel taken aback. Mine? She proudly pulled out her summon. Fine, just don't be too shocked.
This expression made him a bit curious as well.
What on earth does that girl have to be so confident about?
The entity that materialized was a C-rank night elf. Jinwoo froze entirely almost instantly.
This reaction angered Ajin to the point of asking back, what's with that half-assed reaction? Appa might not know, but anything from C-rank and above is considered noble class. Hearing this explanation, Jinwoo only indifferently replied, oh, really?
He continued to observe the elf, thinking to himself, give me a break, noble class my foot. This is the exact type of C-rank commonly seen in dungeons, always used as EXP fodder at the general store.
And then Jinwoo addressed the elf, Dark Elf, can you speak Korean? Hello?
This action left the other two bewildered.
Ajin asked back with a judgmental expression, what are you doing? Hello? You can't hear me? Jinwoo calmly explained, what does it look like I'm doing?
I'm just saying hello and intending to ask the summon my little sister is so proud of to take good care of her. The more she listened, the more speechless she felt with him.
Saying hello my foot. How can a summon talk? This new information caught Jinwoo completely by surprise. They can't talk? In his mind, he recalled his first encounter with Ramba. Do you know how much I missed you? Jinwoo couldn't help but feel puzzled.
But that little Ramba spoke right from our first meeting.
He asked back doubtfully, wait, so summons originally can't talk? Ajin used an even more judgmental expression as she replied, whoever said a summon can speak.
But Jinwoo was busy remembering Ramba's playfulness.
No, well, that's true.
But since Ramba spoke, I thought all humanoid summons could talk now as part of the reality patch.
I already knew Ramba was a special case.
He even remembered her way of speaking.
Did I do well, Jinwoo?
At this moment, Ajin demanded again, now show me Appa's summon. To her surprise, Jinwoo refused once more, let's save it for later.
This attitude shocked her to the point of raising her voice. What? Why? I already showed you mine. Jinwoo repeated once more, I said I'll show you later. Right now, it's best not to draw attention.
I have to be careful when talking to Ramba for a while. He added an urging prompt along with it, hurry up and lead me.
Although throwing a mini tantrum, Ajin complied.
What a total scammer.
Wait for me. Jinwoo's face couldn't hide his astonishment as he witnessed the scene before his eyes.
The place where they stopped was packed with people and summons.
Is this really Jamsil World?
Ajin, walking ahead, softly explained, that's right, when the Tower of Trials appeared, the company completely demolished this whole area.
The more Jinwoo heard, the more curious he became. Why? She furrowed her brows and replied as if it were a matter of course, why? Who would want to have fun next to that gloomy tower?
This place is no longer the land of dreams and hopes.
Jinwoo widened his eyes and asked back, isn't that even more thrilling? The land of adventure and thrill. Then she questioned him right back, what kind of thrill is it when it's deadly? Dungeons have overgrown right in the middle of Jamsil. Who would come to play anymore? Only now did he reluctantly agree, I guess that's true.
Jinwoo's face also grew serious.
Dungeons really are terrifying. But getting to see the places from the game appear in real life, he directed his gaze toward the road ahead, thinking to himself, honestly, it's incredibly exciting.
The two of them ventured deeper inside.
Is that the marketplace over there?
Selling low-grade summoning scrolls here.
For that summon, I can pay you around this much. Yes. With this, you can pull up to a C rank. What's the rate? Yes.
Here, people could freely trade everything from summoning scrolls to runes. Jinwoo looked around, a thrilled smile on his face.
This really brings back memories.
Back then, I was always selling summoning scrolls and runes to that rich guy, B-Troll.
Good job, brother, just pick whatever you want.
This rich guy B-Troll is covering the house.
Meanwhile, Ajin explained as she walked, see that flyer over there?
Pretty much everything you need is right there, so if you need guidance, just go to the information desk. She didn't forget to add, also, since Appa is still a rookie, why don't you try dropping by the academy run by the player headquarters over there? She didn't forget to add, also, since Appa is still a rookie, why don't you try dropping by the academy run by the player headquarters over there? In his heart, he had already mapped out his own path since, from now on, I'm going to camp out here to grind levels anyway.
Jean, still feeling anxious, asked again, are you sure you'll be fine?
Jinwoo reassured her further, you head home first, thanks for leading the way.
Seeing this, she replied, are you planning to stay here?
Taking a few steps forward, he answered back, I plan to look around here by myself for a bit.
Hearing this, Jean nodded as if she understood, I see.
However, she still felt very worried.
Appa has been acting really strange lately. It's almost like he's possessed by something. He only woke up not too long ago, will he really be okay?
Jean had to tell herself, well, he's probably trying his best to figure everything out, so maybe I should just stand by and watch. She called out loudly after him, don't push yourself too hard.
If you need help, call me.
Jinwoo only gave a brief reply before disappearing from Jin's sight, got it. She called out loudly after him, don't push yourself too hard.
If you need help, call me.
Jinwoo only gave a brief reply before disappearing from Jin's sight, got it.
There shouldn't be anyone coming around here, right? Once he had clearly made sure, Jinwoo began to summon.
Ramba materialized with an ecstatic look on her face.
Seeing this, Jinwoo quickly raised his hand and covered Ramba's mouth. This sudden action left her utterly confused. What? What is it?
Jinwoo's face was dead serious as he declared, Ramba, from now on, you are not allowed to talk while outside, got it?
This left Ramba baffled.
Why? He instructed her thoroughly, because we can't let others notice you.
From now on, you can only speak inside dungeons, understood? Nod if you understand.
Good. Then, he sat down and began to calculate.
Should I organize my thoughts for a bit now?
I'll need some seed money to start running dungeons and stuff. His phone screen clearly displayed Jinwoo's current account balance. Staring at that pathetic number, he could only sigh helplessly.
That's life. Jinwoo kept wondering in his heart, can it get any more pathetic than this?
Even though I got into an accident, I didn't expect to have only this much in my bank account.
Going back to working part-time like before would be a total waste of time. He grew angrier by the second. Damn it.
Jinwoo's train of thought developed further. Someone would probably ask why not just ask mom and dad for money.
But that was absolute nonsense.
Because they still had to work 3 jobs at once just to hold this house together.
Thinking up to this point, he asked himself again, and yet I'm supposed to hold out my hand for my parents' money? If I do that, I'm no longer human, I'm no different from a beast.
Jinwoo's face at this moment was half sorrowful, half determined. Even if I have to start all over from scratch, I can still do it. He continued to think about other things.
The reason why Jinwoo was unmatched is because I am a free-to-play ranker.
Looking at the screen in front of him, Jinwoo began to calculate.
A textbook gacha game. The pay-to-win element is incredibly heavy. Didn't B-Troll say he threw 300 million won into it?
Yet I still took the top rank without spending a single dime.
Determination flared in his eyes. Just because this is reality now, does it mean I can't do it? Just you wait and see, I will definitely make my comeback.
To his surprise, a notification suddenly popped up at this moment.
500,000 won received. Jinwoo cried out in sheer shock, what the hell? Where did this money suddenly come from? Don't tell me this is some kind of new player benefit. Accompanying the transfer notification were 2 text messages from Jinwoo's mom.
My son, I heard from Jin that you're already trying hard the moment you woke up, right? I know your personality, you probably wouldn't open your mouth to ask for pocket money. So just use this amount first. Reading up to here, his nose suddenly felt a bit stinging.
Mom!
The memories of the time spent in a coma were recalled, how she was both worried and took care of him all this time.
Mom probably doesn't have any money and has been doing nothing but suffering. And yet, why?
Each of her heartfelt longings always touched him.
Jinwoo, my son.
I'm right here, so please.
Open your eyes, please be healthy again.
He quickly wiped away a tear that was about to fall while muttering, Mom, thank you. His hand clenched into a tight fist, showing absolute determination. Please wait for me, Mom.
I will definitely succeed.
Jinwoo's face at this moment carried a resolute expression, vowing to make his whole family live in comfort. He looked at the status board in front of him and began to calculate. Others have left me far behind over the past 3 years. If I want to catch up, every single minute and second is precious.
The first step to becoming the strongest is acting like it.
To gather the materials needed for growth, I must conquer dungeons. Therefore, Jinno started by purchasing 3 low-grade summoning scrolls.
First, I need to form a team. The first one, player Beck Jinnu has obtained the F-rank summon, Slime. The first one, player Beck Jinnu has obtained the F-rank summon, Slime.
And finally, player Beck Jinnu has obtained the E-rank summon, Venom Lizard. Observing the 3 entities that had just appeared, he couldn't help but wonder.
I pulled an E-rank? I'm pretty lucky, aren't I? If I count Ramba as an E-rank, it means that in just 5 pulls, I hit that 5% chance twice.
Jinnu continued to calculate carefully. Furthermore, the performance of the Venom Lizard is quite decent. Jinnu continued to calculate carefully. Furthermore, the performance of the Venom Lizard is quite decent. Taking a look at the overall picture once more, Jinnu finally made an evaluation. Alright, for now, this lineup is fine. Pull summons, equip runes according to the combat situation, and then level them up. In his heart, he was thinking, in other words, farming runes, hunting monsters, tearing summoning scrolls.
The growth system of BOS is just that. I can always handle that level of grinding.
He had even calculated toward the further future long ago.
And if I gather all 10 of those EX rank summons, a full S rank team or floor 100 of the Tower of Trials, I can easily sweep anything. So first, I have to search for the remaining EX ranks.
Jinnu slowly took a step forward.
Alright,
a confident smile now sat on his face.
Now for the final step.
Pulling out his phone, Jinnu muttered, first, I have to find a dungeon.
Dungeon location.
In his heart, he was thinking at this moment, back when it was a mobile game, I just needed to tap on the stage and it was done.
Looks like it won't be as easy as in the game. Dungeon location.
In his heart, he was thinking at this moment, back when it was a mobile game, I just needed to tap on the stage and it was done.
Looks like it won't be as easy as in the game.
However, in the very next second, his eyes went wide. Jinnu shouted at the top of his voice, what the hell is this?
This racket annoyed the people around him. Does he think the player's zone belongs to his family or something?
Jinnu began to read what was written on his phone screen.
Even if you have a summon.
That crucial piece of information was presented alongside the image of a horned cat.
Today, we will learn about entering a dungeon. But first, do you know that just because you have a summon doesn't mean you're allowed to enter a dungeon? You can't just enter like that?
Not to mention that dungeon gates appear randomly regardless of location, and the difficulty of a dungeon can be determined by the energy it emits.
But the rules have changed, so no matter how easy the dungeon is, a rookie wants to enter, but will they be allowed in? The answer is no. But the rules have changed, so no matter how easy the dungeon is, a rookie wants to enter, but will they be allowed in? The answer is no.
Jinnu sat helplessly on a bench, his face looking none too pleased as he muttered,
fate really is a piece of shit. Why did I have to wake up right after the law changed? Ramba's hand gently touched his shoulder.
Her face clearly spelled out the words, cheer up, Jinnu. This gesture made Jinnu feel somewhat relieved.
He patted her head and replied, thanks, Ramba.
Suddenly, the phone in Jinnu's pocket rang. The person on the other end was none other than Jean.
Hello. She didn't beat around the bush and directly asked, what time are you coming home? Mom is asking what you want to eat tonight.
On his end, Jinnu quickly replied, I can just find something to eat myself.
More importantly, do you know about this? Jean asked back blankly, about what?
At this point, he answered briefly, the thing about having to register as a player first before you can enter a dungeon. This information caused her to suddenly jump up.
Oh, right. Jinna half-jokingly asked back, you didn't hide it from me on purpose, did you? She desperately tried to explain herself, how could I? I really just forgot.
Then she seriously explained, anyway, that regulation is very new.
Because too many people died in dungeons, the government had to step in and intervene. Hearing this, Jinnu couldn't help but feel surprised. That many people died?
Jean continued to explain in full detail, it can only be described as catastrophic, too horrible to mention, total chaos, so now they actually have staff standing right in front of the gates to block people.
You absolutely cannot just sneak inside.
Jean continued to explain in full detail, it can only be described as catastrophic, too horrible to mention, total chaos, so now they actually have staff standing right in front of the gates to block people.
You absolutely cannot just sneak inside.
Jin continued to explain in full detail, it can only be described as catastrophic, too horrible to mention, total chaos, so now they actually have staff standing right in front of the gates to block people.
You absolutely cannot just sneak inside.
The truth was that Jinwoo also understood perfectly well that if everyone let greed blind them and became a player, sooner or later, it would create a fracture in the social system. Jin on her end brought up another topic. Oh right, Appa, there's also the ranking system.
Jinwoo asked back, puzzled. Ranking?
She explained thoroughly, that system ranks the top 100 domestic and international players every year. 1 is Rachel Rose, 2 is Yoshida Hikaru, 3 is William Zenas.
4 is Alexandro Veskov, 5 is Dulong Tai, 6 is Olivia Abernathy, 7 is Gersbale, 8 is Bettino. Our country doesn't even make it onto the global leaderboard. It's truly tragic. And then she mentioned another name. If the legendary Jinwoo god appeared, our country's status would skyrocket.
Jinwoo, having his sensitive spot touched, hastily hung up.
Right, anyway, thanks for letting me know. I'm hanging up.
Afterwards, he silently stared at his phone for a long time, finally making a decision.
Since I'm temporarily prepared anyway, I'll just call it a day for today.
The pot of food on the stove was boiling vigorously at this moment.
Jinwoo's father and mother spent a quiet moment together.
Suddenly, a noise rang out, causing Jinwoo's father to look up. He saw that Jinwoo was fully prepared to leave the house, which made him feel anxious.
You're up already? It's only 6 in the morning.
Jinwoo politely replied, yes, I have to go out early.
His mother chimed in at this point, Jinwoo, you're leaving already? Eat some rice balls before you go. But Jinwoo politely declined, no, it's fine, Mom.
While tying his shoelaces, he suddenly paused, then softly spoke, Mom, Dad. A bright smile graced Jinwoo's face at this moment. I'm sorry for only showing you my worst sides all this time, and thank you. Having said those words, he left the house, leaving the two elders with stunned expressions.
I'm leaving.
At this point, Jinwoo's father scratched his head and muttered, this kid makes a person feel so embarrassed.
Dear, but his mother was worried about a different issue. Will our Jinwoo be okay?
Seeing her expression like that, his father also gently comforted her, don't worry, the government has safety training these days.
Let's eat breakfast quickly and get going too.
Jinwoo's mom looked toward the door and muttered, you must stay safe. Jinwoo brought up the fact that this was an era where all of humanity could become players. Besides, among countries, South Korea had early on drawn attention due to an unusually high mortality rate in dungeons. The reason for this, the answer was incredibly simple, was a kind of protagonist syndrome caused by greed. Broadly speaking, players deluded themselves into thinking they were the main characters of a fantasy world. Because of this delusion, they recklessly charged into dungeons and died. It had even become such a serious problem that foreign media speculated that too many talented gamers vanished during this phase. They analyzed that this was because South Korea used to be a gaming powerhouse, yet now sat at the bottom 10 of every leaderboard.
How will the body of a dead man in his 20s be recovered? Gaming powerhouse South Korea plummets into the abyss.
Jinwoo was absorbing the information through his phone. Hearing this, he couldn't help but feel bewildered. I didn't expect there to be so many deaths just because of delusions. In his heart, his thoughts wandered even deeper. It's a bit funny to say because I myself was addicted to this game for 10 years, but honestly, it sounds kind of pathetic.
But don't they feel afraid?
In his heart, his thoughts wandered even deeper. It's a bit funny to say because I myself was addicted to this game for 10 years, but honestly, it sounds kind of pathetic.
But don't they feel afraid? Then Jinwoo stepped forward. He held out his information form, accompanying it with the words, here is my application. The female clerk quickly replied, all right, the registration is all complete. At this moment, Jinwoo asked further, excuse me, how many people will be granted player qualification? At this moment, Jinwoo asked further, excuse me, how many people will be granted player qualification? But in the end, he made up his mind. Jinwoo muttered to himself in his heart, if I can't even get past a trivial thing like this, he set his own resolution, then how can I be called one heaven? At the cafe for applicants waiting for results, a few profiles were placed on the table with an annoyed remark. I didn't expect that out of all these people, only 50 would be chosen. Park Chang-suk looked at the stack of papers in front of him and remarked again, if we want to recruit actual talent, we need to select more. Chang Suk, headquarters judge. He muttered to himself alone, honestly, those old fogies sitting in the air-conditioned rooms are making everything stagnant.
To his surprise, before he could finish his train of thought, he was interrupted by an assault.
What was that?
The person who walked in spoke sarcastically, "Hey there, Park Chang-suk." Kim Jang looked at the scene in front of him and added a challenging remark, "You look pretty relaxed after killing off my kids."
Chang Suk's face immediately contorted with intense rage. "You crazy bastard."
He also quickly called upon his summon.
A party was rapidly formed. The onlookers witnessing this scene couldn't help but cry out, "That's the headquarters martial alliance over there."
Of all the places they could go, they had to come right here. Jinu was also drawn to the commotion at this moment.
He looked at the tension between the two of them. "What's going on?" Jinu's face showed no amusement toward this. "What kind of crazy situation is this?"
The attention of the surrounding crowd focused on the tense scene ahead.
What suddenly happened? A few of them were even trembling with fear. "What should we do? We won't die, right?"
Right at that moment, an alliance member popped out.
"It's fine. That person over there is Park Chang-suk. People call him the Alliance Destroyer Yaksha."
Jinu had also directed his gaze over there. He looked at Kim Jang, a thought flashing through his mind, an alliance, followed by a guess.
"Don't tell me they're using summons to commit evil deeds now."
Park Chang-suk shouted a signal at the top of his voice, "Emergency situation."
"Don't tell me they're using summons to commit evil deeds now." Jinu also quickly followed suit and summoned Ramba.
She was still dazed at this moment, checking to see what was happening. The moment a first word slipped out, Jinu immediately covered Ramba's mouth. He reminded her in a low voice, "Sorry, but you promised you wouldn't speak while outside." On this side, Kim Jang continued to sneer, "Turns out you're some kind of disciple of justice."
He didn't waste any time and instantly ordered his red demon to charge and attack. "Let's see how long you can last."
Jino stayed hidden in one spot, cautiously observing the situation.
Intervening for no reason would only bring him a massive headache.
And then he made a decision. For now, he would just watch how they fought. The fire butterfly continuously shot out fireballs, which crashed onto the ground and triggered explosions. However, Kim Jang's red demon was completely unscathed.
This only made him even more smug. "Is that all you've got?"
On the opposite side, Park Chang-suk was starting to feel annoyed. Meanwhile, Jinu muttered a comment, blurting it out as if he couldn't believe his own eyes.
"Man, what a total noob." Even Ramba, sitting on his head, shared the exact same expression. "You call that a fight?" Jino quickly spoke up as she yanked his hair. "Ouch, that hurts, Ramba." The bystanders now started whispering and gossiping among themselves. "Looks like Park Chang-suk is being pushed back. What if he loses?"
Every single word they said carried clear panic.
"No way, those guys definitely won't hesitate to slaughter civilians too." Hearing this, Jinu couldn't help but ask himself, "What should I do?"
He looked at the situation and began to analyze it. If he stepped in to help and got dragged into this mess, while the red demon was gradually gaining the upper hand, and the conclusion was reached, he would end up dead right here before he even got a chance to live a peaceful life. Putting his thoughts into action, Jinu approached and struck up a conversation with Park Chang-suk. "Excuse me." Seeing this, the older man immediately tried to stop him. "It's dangerous, please step back."
But he flat out refused. "No. The flame turtle's skill timing is totally off."
Next, he pointed behind him along with a piece of advice, "Look at the buffers behind that red orc."
Jinu forced Park Chang-suk to look at the demon in the back.
"They're about to buff fire resistance."
Jinu forced Park Chang-suk to look at the demon in the back.
"They're about to buff fire resistance." Hearing this, Park Chang-suk quickly thought to himself. Every time those buffers in the back cast a skill, the orc's body glowed red.
Was that fire resistance? He very quickly came up with a countermeasure.
If that's the case, the red demon on this side is preparing to attack. But Park Chang-suk was one step ahead.
Right now, Flame Turtle,
an incredibly powerful pillar of fire shot out, blasting right at the red demon. It shrieked in agony, caught completely off guard.
Witnessing this, Park Chang-suk couldn't help but shout in pure excitement, "Awesome, it actually worked." Meanwhile, Kim Jang on the opposite side roared at the top of his lungs, "Holy crap, how did you know?" The moment the hazy smoke began to clear was exactly when Park Chang-suk's wood element summon launched its attack. Kim Jang could only watch helplessly as his support demon got ambushed. This is insane. Park Chang-suk's summons seized the opportunity and unleashed a coordinated barrage.
The red demon took the full brunt of a rain of fire and was burned to a crisp.
Watching them vanish, Kim Jang could only mutter in horror, how is this even possible?
He panicked as he saw Park Chang-suk slowly walking toward him.
Wait a minute.
Nothing but absolute terror was left on Kim Jang's face. I'll turn myself in.
I surrender. I was wrong.
However, Park Chang-suk's wood element summon had already moved. It bound him tightly, completely ignoring his begging.
Please spare me. I'll never be a gangster again. Park Chang-suk made a cold declaration. Shut up.
His voice was low and heavy.
You know the union gets executed on sight.
Kim Jang watched helplessly as the tree branches wrapped around his body.
No. Park Chang-suk coldly delivered a final word, right?
The command was given, and the summon instantly crushed down, turning Kim Jang into an exploding bubble. Only now did the surrounding crowd feel somewhat relieved.
Is it over?
They began to cheer for Park Chang-suk.
We won. Park Chang-suk won. You're amazing, man.
Park Chang-suk even looked thrilled seeing Kim Jang's death. That guy totally got what he deserved.
HQ is the absolute best.
This extreme shift in values made Jinwoo wonder, even if he's a criminal, harboring this much hatred when a person was just killed right in front of them, this world really wasn't the place he used to know anymore. His gaze grew sharper.
If he didn't get serious, surviving would be tough.
Meanwhile, Park Chang-suk was slowly walking up to him.
Excuse me, young man, he spoke very politely. Thank you so much for earlier.
I'm Park Chang-suk, an examiner from the player headquarters. Followed by an expression of gratitude. Thanks to you, I was able to catch that terrorist. Jinwoo shook his hand while replying, don't mention it. Park Chang-suk continued to ask about something else. I'd like to send you a reward.
May I ask which guild you belong to?
Only then did he honestly explain, the thing is, I haven't registered with headquarters yet.
Is that going to be an issue? Hearing that, Park Chang-suk couldn't help but feel shocked. What? Out of tens of thousands of summon types, you recognized it in a split second, and you haven't even officially registered yet? Park Chang-suk went on to suggest, well, do you have your ID with you?
We just need to verify your identity.
Jinwoo quickly replied, yes.
Taking the ID card in his hand, Park Chang-suk politely followed up, thank you.
He briefly explained the procedure. Once the background check is done, a reward fitting the regulations will be issued. Hearing this, Jinwoo just gave a short reply, I see.
He smiled and turned to leave.
Then I'll leave it in your hands. Park Chang-suk's expression changed almost instantly. He pressed a button to make a call, then assigned a task to the person on the other end of the line. It's me. I just sent you some data. The target of the investigation is none other than Jinwoo. Yes, Baek Jinwoo. Look into him for me.
As for Jinwoo himself, he still had absolutely no idea about this. Jinwoo went back to the place where he had summoned Ramba. A pastry was held out in front of her.
Here. It must have been super annoying not being able to talk earlier, right? Ramba's eyes sparkled at the sight of food.
Watching her enjoy the pastry, Jinwoo could only think to himself, she really is simple-minded.
He felt a lot more relieved as he kept thinking, I heard some players actually argue with their summons, but Ramba is so easy to handle, a single cream bread solves everything.
Then he started calculating something else.
Anyway, things should turn out fine, right?
In his head, Jinwoo was recalling the fight from earlier. Initially, I had no intention of getting involved, but if I hadn't, everyone might have died there.
When the red demon had almost won, he let out another sigh.
The world had changed way more than he imagined.
Jinwoo showed his clear determination, I can't delay hunting any longer.
Regarding his targets, the next step was to first gather summoning scrolls as fast as possible and call forth the next summon. Among them, the reason for this choice was that the top priorities were the Spearman and the Dragon Mage. On
this side, Ramba was already stuffed full. Jinwoo stood up while gesturing, alright, a bright smile appeared on his face. Shall we get going? Right in the middle of the bustling park, Park Chang-suk gasped. What? He hurriedly asked again. Jinwoo had been hospitalized for 3 whole years due to a car accident.
At the same time, Park Chang-suk also realized, no wonder he's an unregistered player. Old memories rushed back. Thinking back, 3 years ago was exactly when the world turned upside down. With everything being so chaotic back then, an accident was completely normal, so in a way, it made sense. The headquarters staff quickly added, yes, and he applied to register as a player the moment he got discharged.
Hearing that, he was instantly startled. What? In a rush, Park Chang-suk looked over Jinu's information line by line. Staring at the screen, he suddenly muttered, "Is this for real? What the hell?" Staring at the screen, he suddenly muttered, "Is this for real? What the hell?"
Lost in thought for a moment, Park Chang-suk suddenly requested, "By the way, regarding the assigned examiners for this month, tell them I'll be personally stepping in this time."
"Don't ask why."
The other end of the line quickly replied, "Yes, sir."
Understood. Following that, a beep sounded, signaling the end of the call, leaving Park Chang-suk deep in thought.
Waking up after an accident was one thing, but applying to register as a player immediately upon waking up meant his adaptability must be insanely fast. The more he thought about it, the brighter the smile on his face became.
Back Jinu, he might just turn out to be an extraordinary talent.
On the other hand, Jinu was now inside a formal, grand building. He took slow steps forward, letting out a fresh exclamation of awe.
Jinu looked ahead with some dread.
He knew it would be crowded, but seeing the suffocating mass of people, he asked doubtfully, "Are all these people here for training?" Then Jinu thought to himself, "So I have to beat all these rivals just to become a player." Despite that, he remained completely relaxed. That's gonna be a piece of cake, because nobody understands this game better than I do.
Right at that moment, another rhythmic set of footsteps echoed. Without making them wait any longer, the examiner spoke up, "Is everyone gathered here?"
This made him look over with anticipation.
It was starting. However, Jinu's face instantly froze in shock.
Right in front of him, Park Chang-suk clearly announced, "I am Park Chang-suk, an examiner from headquarters. I will now begin the training session before the written exam."
Then after a while, the sunlight had gradually mellowed out. Jinu and Park Chang-suk were meeting up in a cafe.
"You were a bit surprised, weren't you?"
To that question, he replied awkwardly, "Yeah, well, I didn't expect the examiner to be you." Park Chang-suk smiled on his end, "I guess this is what they call destiny." "How was the training session?"
But this time, Gina hesitated again.
The training session.
Thinking back to earlier, Park Chang-suk had taught them a few things.
This is a format that frequently appears on the written exam.
Hearing this, Gina suddenly flinched when considering the summon combinations here.
His sudden movement accidentally woke up Ramba, who was fast asleep. What the heck? Meanwhile, he was feeling incredibly indignant. Are you kidding me? Isn't this the combo I used to popularize back in the day?
Ask for my permission before using it, please. Even so, he just held it in awkwardly.
It's not bad. Even though I am a little annoyed.
A chuckle came from Park Chang-suk's side. "I'm glad to hear that." Then he suddenly cleared his throat. "The reason I called you out privately, Mr. Jinu, is because of the reward I mentioned last time." With a serious attitude, Park Chang-suk began to speak. "But before that, there's one thing I want to ask you."
Jinu replied curiously, "What is it?" Right after getting his consent, the man instantly asked, "Mr. Jinu, could it be that you used to be a gamer?"
Hearing that title, he looked surprised.
A gamer?
He also quickly added, "Gamer is the term for people who used to play Summon or War in the past. No matter how long they played, as long as they played that game, they're called gamers."
Summon or War, and 70% of the Korean rankers are gamers. Thanks to that explanation, it clicked for Jinu.
Thinking back, it really is a bit strange for someone who isn't even an official player to know about summon buffs. Then he admitted it. "Yeah, well, I did play it before." That answer got Park Chang-suk excited. "I knew it."
"Can I ask how long you played?"
Facing this question, Jinu was a bit hesitant. That was a dead game. The player count was practically non-existent. If he said 10 years, he'd be recognized instantly. After a moment of hesitation, he quietly gave a number, about a year. But contrary to his worries, Park Chang-suk suddenly fired up. "Are you serious?" His over-the-top reaction left Jinu bewildered. "Yeah, is there a problem?"
"Geez, did I understate it too much?"
As for Park Chang-suk, he looked like he had just found a treasure. "You actually played that dead game for a whole year? That's seriously impressive." On the contrary, he was in a super awkward spot, unable to argue. Next, Jino said forcefully, "Yeah, it just kind of turned out that way." On the other hand, Park Chang-suk was absolutely thrilled. Most Korean rankers played for less than half a year, but a whole year. But very quickly, he got back to the main topic. Please excuse my bad manners. I've prepared 2 reward options for you. Pick the one you want. After listening, Jinwoo nodded. Alright, I got it. Just like that, he quickly listed them out. First, I will not only use my authority to grant you your player registration right away, Park Chang-suk said very confidently, exempting you from the recruitment exam immediately, but I will also guarantee you a job position at headquarters. Jinwoo, meanwhile, just listened while resting his chin on his hand, looking completely casual. And the second option is, Park Chang-suk intentionally emphasized, a cash reward of 5 million won. He himself instantly judged, this is an obvious choice. As for Park Chang-suk, he was incredibly smug, laughing to himself. Now, how about that? Not only getting registered but also a job at headquarters, which is even harder to get into than a major conglomerate. Of course he'll pick the first one. But Jinwoo's voice rang out decisively, I'll take the money. Hearing that, he was completely shocked. What did you say? What? But if you don't, player registration is going to take quite a while. You know that, right? On the flip side, Jinwoo still coldly drew the line. I appreciate your concern, but I'll be fine. At the same time, he proactively stood up. I can handle the registration myself, and I don't really have any intention of joining headquarters anyway. I'm busy looking for summons, I don't have time to waste. Just like that, he and his summon went to take the exam, and it didn't take long before the staff called out his name, contestant Baek Jinwoo. With a ready mindset, he replied, yes. Next, she professionally gave instructions just like what he heard earlier for the practical exam. You just need to conquer the daily dungeon. This time you'll be entering the 3rd dungeon, and the format is participation. At this moment, Park Chang-suk was watching them from behind. He himself was still bewildered. I never thought he would refuse. Suddenly, Park Chang-suk frowned slightly in tension. Moreover, remembering what happened before, when a gasp of astonishment rang out, this is insane. His understanding of runes and summons is deeper than anyone else's. The Research Institute staff were absolutely overjoyed. Why didn't I think of this sooner? Thanks to this contestant, Baek Jinwoo, I realized just how narrow my vision was. Another person was so moved they almost cried. Korea finally has a genius. He even asserted that if everything went smoothly, this guy could even make it onto the leaderboards. This left Park Chang-suk completely dazed and confused. Is he really that good? Back to the present, his regret grew even heavier. This is the first time I've seen those arrogant professors react like that. Should I have offered better terms? Right at this moment, the staff member gestured toward the gate. The explanation ends here, you may enter now. Jinwoo walked closer to the entrance accordingly. So, carrying a bit of curiosity, he stepped inside along with Gorilla and Ramba. Let's give it a shot. The space transformed instantly. The system's energy enveloped him in a brilliant golden light. Soon, they were standing in a completely different atmosphere. The dungeon description also appeared right before his eyes. A room full of highly toxic slimes. Defeat the slimes and quickly escape the dungeon. Without a moment's hesitation, Jinwoo gave his first command, Ramba. Ramba immediately acted energetically upon hearing it. I'll start gathering energy right away. And thanks to this resonance, the gorilla continuously boosted its power. The 3rd dungeon was a maze. Its structure required taking down slimes while navigating, and finally facing the boss. And at the same time, it was a place where newbies wasted all their time getting lost. Time's up. After finishing his calculations, the corner of Jinwoo's mouth curved slightly up. He created a shield and dashed straight ahead. However, the slimes were extremely slow. Just ignore them, run straight. Ramba also shouted along, let's go. Jinwoo thought simultaneously, I've gotten lost in this place so many times I'm sick of it, so finding the way is just child's play. And with that confidence, they aimed straight for a door over there. And the moment the door opened, Jinwoo instantly ran through it. If I take the shortcut, it's as good as done. But right at this moment, danger warnings started going off one after another. Jinwoo, however, looked very expectant. This is the first real confrontation, right? Right in front of him, a massive slime was already waiting. Giant slime. Jinwoo excitedly ordered the attack. Ramba stood by his side, energetically casting spells. Let's rock, let's go. The gorilla enthusiastically charged straight ahead. It leaped high into the air,
preparing to land a blow on the opponent. The gorilla used all its strength to deliver a fierce, heavy punch down. Its consecutive punches made Gino sigh in immense admiration. Just as expected, there was a reason why Rambo was considered way too overpowered. He thought proudly to himself, even an F-rank summon can have its attack speed boosted to that extent. Standing and watching, Gino caught the excitement. Imagine how terrifying it would be if that attack speed buff was applied to a different summon. On the other side, Rambo was enthusiastically cheering for the gorilla. Perfect, so good. Crush it, the system quickly displayed a notification. You have defeated the boss monster. It continued to confirm the clear time for Jinnu. Dungeon cleared in 5 minutes 32 seconds. He read it and let out a resigned sigh. So slow. Back when I was Jinnagod, it took me less than a minute, but I guess with an F rank, it can't be helped. It continued to confirm the clear time for Jinnu. Dungeon cleared in 5 minutes 32 seconds. Jinnu muttered in a daze. What? Notifications kept popping up rapidly. First time clear reward is being sent. Advanced Summoning Scroll X3. First time clear reward is being sent. Advanced Summoning Scroll X3. Additional reward is being sent. Low grade Abrasive X12. This result completely blew past his expectations. Is this a new Korean record? Back in the familiar room, a startled voice rang out. Senior, look at this, the record has changed. The female staff member at the headquarters walked over with wide eyes to check. What? Where? Her subordinate quickly pointed it out. The third beginner dungeon was cleared in 5 minutes 32 seconds. The female headquarters staff member muttered in shock. In just 5 minutes? That's a huge cut. Did Kong Jianho discover a new combo? She also saw the opponent's info card. Baek Jinwoo, age 20, nationality South Korea, date of birth 20. Abilities. The female staff member honestly commented, never heard of this name. Her subordinate judged skeptically, I don't think he's a ranked player. This hypothesis stunned her even more. So an anonymous player broke the record, and it's the #1 record at that? The news quickly spread to the headquarters meeting. A staff member whispered in shock, this is truly astonishing. Baek Jinwoo wasn't the only one on her mind, another person was equally thrilled. In his heart, Park Chang-suk praised Jinwoo to high heaven, there's no doubt about it. He's the real deal. Jinwoo is a national treasure. He officially made a firm resolution, no matter what, we have to keep him. At least if our country wants to survive, we must absolutely prevent him from naturalizing elsewhere. Park Chang-suk urgently gave directives to his subordinate, register Jinwoo as a player immediately. The female staff member asked back in surprise, what? Without even needing a dual test? Park Chang-suk eloquently analyzed, as everyone knows, time attack is split into domestic and global leaderboards. The #1 spot in Korea held by Kong Jianho is 6 minutes 41 seconds. The #1 global spot held by Rachel is 2 minutes 25 seconds. He personally stood up to convince everyone, Jinwoo has surpassed the time of Korea's top player. Does a player duel even mean anything anymore? Park Chang-suk assertively drew a conclusion. I believe those with talent must be granted special privileges. The magnificent headquarters building loomed grandly into view. Jinwoo was present here, feeling extremely unimpressed. To think 5 minutes became the top record. Is this really the limit of Korea's level? A familiar voice called out. Mr. Jinwoo. Park Chang-suk welcomed him with a beaming smile. I've been dying to meet you, Mr. Baek Jinwoo. Seeing that reaction made him flinch a bit, looking low-key scary. Right as they met, the man started rambling on and on. I saw your time attack record, it was truly magnificent. How on earth did you break the Korean record on your very first try? Park Chang-suk eagerly pressed for more answers. The maze in the third dungeon is insanely complicated, right? Jinwoo could only laugh it off to play along superficially, I guess so. He thought to himself awkwardly, feels like I'm being praised for swimming well when I'm a fish. Park Chang-suk personally handed him a card. First of all, please take this. Jinwoo took the card and muttered in surprise, this is. The man immediately explained excitedly, this is a player card. You've been fast-tracked for immediate player registration. Park Chang-suk emphatically added, because you have nothing left to prove. Mr. Baek Jinwoo. Upon receiving the card, Jinwoo was also extremely satisfied. This isn't bad, huh? Park Chang-suk politely expressed his curiosity. Can I ask how you managed to break the record? Holding the player card in his hand, Jinwoo suddenly hesitated. He carefully evaluated the situation. If I share what I know right now,
Korea's level will skyrocket in the blink of an eye. Jinwoo was forced to think through this thoroughly.
The problem is, what happens after that?
In the best-case scenario, idolizing Jinwoo God, if I'm lucky, I'll enjoy fame and fortune with government backing. But I also thought about the worst-case scenario, being kidnapped by bad guys who'll interrogate me to spit out everything I know.
I already told you everything.
On the flip side, I could be forcefully dragged away and stripped of everything. After weighing it all out, Jinwoo finally spoke up carefully. First of all, regarding your question just now.
He flatly questioned Park Chang-suk. You know that's extremely impolite, right?
The man also understood and proactively admitted his fault. Yes, I apologize. Park Chang-suk straightforwardly followed up. A gamer's strategy is only shared among gamers. That is highly sensitive information. But he still firmly tried to persuade Jinwoo. But please understand, South Korea is just that desperate for talent right now. Jinwoo silently evaluated the other guy's behavior. He had transferred the promised money immediately, his personality was decent, and he seemed pretty reasonable.
He smiled with amusement as an idea struck him. What if I try to use the government to my advantage? If I play this right, I might actually grow much faster than going solo.
That was why Jinwoo spoke up to respond to the examiner.
Park Chang-suk nervously replied, yes.
He officially made a proposal. Let's meet privately, let's move somewhere else for a moment.
The location was a cozy nearby cafe. Park Chang-suk directly expressed his desire. I'll be blunt.
Please help us, he sincerely emphasized. Our headquarters needs your knowledge, Mr. Jinwoo. Park Chang-suk also frankly disclosed. We did some digging and heard that you were bedridden in the hospital for 3 whole years.
Jinwoo looked slightly annoyed. You guys ran a background check on me?
Facing that, he had no choice but to confess, I'm sorry, but unregistered players with high-level skills are highly likely to be part of the union.
Jinwoo snapped back with a stern look. Now that I'm registered, there won't be any further investigations, right? Don't ever do that again. Park Chang-suk could only meekly promise right away, yes.
Jinwoo's careless attitude also made him suspicious. Normally, whenever the government was mentioned, people would get scared and try their absolute best to cooperate. Park Chang-suk silently evaluated in his mind, yet this guy shows absolutely no signs of that. He knows his own worth all too well. Jinwoo set his coffee cup down, getting serious about the big picture. First of all, I've actually been thinking about this.
What do I get out of helping the government side?
Park Chang-suk assertively declared, my cooperation. You don't seem to fully understand this part yet.
Cooperation.
He proudly introduced himself to Jinwoo. It's a bit embarrassing to say it out loud, but I actually hold a pretty high position in headquarters. Park Chang-suk continued to explain, headquarters examiners are elected by public vote, so if my track record is good, I can get more votes and climb even higher.
Jinwoo vaguely understood the concept. So he's basically like a politician.
After explaining, Park Chang-suk firmly stated, that was why he held his head high and confidently guaranteed one thing. Within the scope of my authority, I will provide you with every possible support.
Jinwoo secretly pondered, sounds a bit unappealing, honestly.
The compensation is vague, and since he's a public servant, he can't just throw budget money around on a whim. Finally, he made his decision.
If that's the case.
Jinwoo tapped his fingers on the table and spoke up seriously, then let's do this. He directly laid out his demand, just for 1 month.
Park Chang-suk couldn't help but be startled by such a brief time frame.
What? Jinwoo smiled confidently as he explained the condition. Since I just registered, I'll require your support during my growth for 1 month.
He even clearly laid out the terms attached to it. If I find it satisfactory, we can continue cooperating. If it's not working out, I'll return everything I've received or give you an amount of information equivalent to that value. Park Chang-suk couldn't help but burst out laughing at Jinwoo's audacity. So what he's saying right now is that he's going to use me as his personal assistant for a month? He thought to himself with amusement, what a cheeky brat, but there's no way around it. Then Park Chang-suk extended his hand, grandly accepting, fine, because he was absolutely certain of one thing, staying close to this kid would definitely net him more. Park Chang-suk shook hands with Jinwoo, sealing the deal. Then let's leave it at that. Jinwoo continued to talk with Park Chang-suk. First of all, there's something I want to ask.
He seriously made a request.
Please don't let the word about my new record get out. Jinwoo honestly expressed, I'm worried about my safety.
Park Chang-suk suddenly had a doubt. Excuse me, if it's a matter of your safety, headquarters could, but he quickly understood right away.
No,
Park Chang-suk silently concluded in his heart, how can a headquarters that can't even handle a single gang protect a top-tier talent? He clenched his fists in tension. Jinwoo knew that too. Ultimately, Park Chang-suk agreed with him, I understand. I'll do my best to keep a lid on this. He quickly followed up, but over time, some information will still leak out. That's inevitable. Without needing to hear the rest of the sentence, Jinwoo stood up immediately, that will do. He left decisively, then I'll take my leave first. Park Chang-suk could only awkwardly say goodbye, see you next time. Ultimately, Jinwoo got exactly what he wanted. Great, now I've got him to keep quiet. He turned on his phone with excitement, thinking to himself, time to check the rewards I got earlier. Jinwoo checked the system and praised it to high heaven. He muttered blankly, these rewards are seriously insane. The polish is whatever, but there's actually an advanced summoning scroll? The system displayed 2 top-tier rewards, Advanced Summoning Scroll X3, Low-Grade Polish X2. Jinwoo nodded in approval, just as expected from a first-time clear achievement reward, which can only be obtained once per player. But then he hesitated in his thoughts, I really want to open them right now, but gambling with just 3 scrolls is a bit. Jinwoo blurted out a whisper, maybe selling them for cash would actually be better. Suddenly, he remembered something, oh right, I still have that. Jinwoo pulled out his phone immediately. The player network, a place that only registered players could use. Most item transactions were conducted through here. He instinctively recalled Park Chang-suk's face, or rather what the old congressman had told him while setting it up. At that time, he had firmly emphasized that you absolutely must use it. I highly recommend it. That was why Jinwoo started tapping around to search. Let's see. After checking the prices, he gasped in shock, huh? Jinwoo shoved the phone right up to his face as if he couldn't believe his eyes. What the hell? He muttered tremulously, the premium ones are worth a whopping 3 million. Jinwoo quickly did the math in shock, so that means I just made 900,000 won after a 5-minute dungeon run? This is crazy. The capitalist spirit suddenly surged within him. And this is just at this level. Once his stats increased even further, the vision of wealth left Jinwoo mesmerized as he thought, Mom, Dad, and Ajin too. I will never let anyone worry about money ever again. The whole family was looking at him happily. My son. Jinwoo. Appa. He started seriously sorting through the items. First, I'll sell these advanced summoning scrolls and use that money to buy back low-grade summoning scrolls. The drill sergeant and the fire dragon mage were both broken summons that could take down S ranks. Until he summoned those 2, he would only open low-grade scrolls. His shopping cart was also all set up. He was currently selling 3 advanced summoning scrolls. After scrolling for a while, Jinwoo realized something. But he quickly found an inconsistency. These low-grade ones are usually accumulated from dungeon runs. Why on earth are they priced at 5,000 won a scroll? And even though the number of sellers far outnumbered the buyers, not a single person was selling them for cheaper. An idea flashed in Jinwoo's head. At times like this, the other end of the line picked up immediately, hello. The person he called was none other than Ajin. Appa, what's up? Jinwoo boldly thought to himself, it's time to use your luck. The explanation didn't take long. Ajin quickly tipped him off, oh, that? Headquarters buys them up. Jinwoo asked back in confusion, headquarters? Why would they bother? The other end of the line casually said, I heard it's to support rankers or something like that. Ajin thoroughly explained the process. They used the state budget to buy summoning scrolls in bulk, and the floor price is always 500 won. But they only buy a limited amount each day. She emphasized one thing, since they can always sell to headquarters, nobody is willing to drop their prices. They just hold on to them and wait. Thanks to Ajin, it clicked for Jinwoo, so that's how it is. Ajin quickly followed up, but it looks like that policy is about to be abolished. He asked in surprise, huh? Why is that? She pointed it out directly, it's an old policy from the early days, so now those low-grade scrolls that headquarters doesn't even bother using are piling up like a mountain. This was exactly what Jinwoo needed to hear. Is that so? Thanks for telling me. I'm hanging up now. He smiled boldly, deciding to take full advantage of this opportunity. So low-grade scrolls are in massive oversupply, huh? The next day at the office, Park Chang-suk radiantly welcomed the key player. Welcome, Mr. Jinwoo. Park Chang-suk laughed out loud in excitement.
You must have missed me a lot to come back this quickly. Jinwoo intentionally dodged it. Yeah, something like that. He warmly asked further, did you need to see me for something? Jinna hesitated to speak. Well, he politely stated his request. I was wondering if I could get some low-grade summoning scrolls? Park Chang-suk was equally surprised. What? Not mid-grade or advanced ones? He still enthusiastically pressed on. How many are you looking to get? Jinwoo just went all in and closed the deal. As many as possible, sir. Park Chang-suk seriously whispered. As many as? He carefully thought it over. I receive 50,000 scrolls every day, so giving him a few won't be an issue. However, Park Chang-suk directly set a boundary first. I can give them to you, but if you're planning to resell them for a profit, Jinwoo casually explained, it's nothing like that. They're just sitting idly on the market anyway, so I figured I might as well use them myself. Hearing this, he understood instantly. So you've already made your calculations, completely with the rest. If a guy like him goes through the trouble of gathering low-grade scrolls like this, he's clearly plotting something very special. He generously requested, fine, but I have one condition. Jinwoo looked surprised. A condition? Only then did Park Chang-suk assertively demand, give me a decent piece of information as a sample. His reasoning was extremely logical. I'm an elected congressman at headquarters. If I'm caught randomly handing out scrolls purchased with taxpayers' money, the public will lose faith in me. Park Chang-suk expressed bluntly, so if you provide me with information, I will give you a corresponding amount of low-grade summoning scrolls in return. You see, I need at least a bit of a safety net for myself. It seemed Jinwoo had anticipated this as well. So he won't hand them over for free? He became even more confident. Even better. That means if I give him good information, he'll consider it equally valuable. Jinwoo comfortably accepted right away. Sounds fair. He began to reveal a topic. First of all, there's something called an achievement chain. Park Chang-suk, as expected, had never heard of the phrase, an achievement chain? Jinwoo continued to clarify, that's right. Currently, the reward for the domestic number 1 achievement is set at 3 advanced scrolls per dungeon. Meaning, completing it in 6 minutes 20 seconds rewards advanced summoning scroll x3. He explained thoroughly, but when another player breaks that record, they can claim the reward once again. For example, with a time of 5 minutes 32 seconds compared to 6 minutes 20 seconds, they will receive advanced summoning scroll x3. Taking advantage of this, Jinwoo directly proposed a strategy, so if players take turns shaving off the record by just 1 second at a time, they can maximize the total value of the rewards received. Think of it like a relay race, 5 minutes 31 seconds, then shorten to 5 minutes 30 seconds. The more they do this, the more South Korea's national power will increase accordingly. Park Chang-suk quickly acknowledged this clever method. I see. Actually, that's a method we've used before. Most of the current rankers have already claimed that reward once. He agreed immediately. However, there are still plenty of players who have never received any rewards, so I don't think this will cause any problems. Jinwoo gave a short nod. Understood. He continued to reveal, the entire information I'm offering is the complete strategy for the 3rd dungeon. Park Chang-suk enthusiastically clapped his hands loudly. I know it. He widened his eyes and pressed further. That's the exact method you used this time, right? Jinwoo was a bit exhausted by that intensity. No. That's something the 5 emperors used to use. He had said he remembered all of their names, so he wouldn't believe me anyway. He continued to lay out the execution. Yes, with this method, anyone who follows it can finish the dungeon in about 3 minutes. Park Chang-suk cheered excitedly. 3 minutes? What on earth is it? Suddenly, Jinwoo seriously interrupted him. Before diving deeper into that, he quickly held up a hand with 5 fingers. Jinwoo began to lay out the deal. We should settle on a fair price for this information. In addition to the low-grade summoning scrolls you promised, I want 50 more advanced summoning scrolls. What do you think? Park Chang-suk gasped in shock. Excuse me, 50 scrolls is 150 million. He still resolutely finalized it. Honestly, that price is still dirt cheap. Jinwoo bluntly emphasized, this tactic works even in high-level dungeons, not just those early low-grade ones. And the sheer amount of achievement rewards you'll get from this alone is worth billions. Naturally, Park Chang-suk couldn't refute that. It was true, which was why he finally decided to accept and close the deal. Naturally, Park Chang-suk couldn't refute that. It was true, which was why he finally decided to accept and close the deal. Satisfied with this transaction, Gino smiled reassuringly. You won't regret this deal. Evening was approaching when someone's voice rang out. Examiner, everyone has gathered. The members of Park Chang-suk's team had assembled. Why gather so suddenly right at clockout time? A smile was plastered on his face at this moment. I called you guys here because there's something I want to test. The young guy on the opposite side felt excited upon hearing that. Oh ho, the examiner never calls us out of nowhere like this. So this is definitely no ordinary test, right? Park Chang-suk began to present. Everyone already knows the news that the record for the third dungeon was just broken, right? Those listening all focused on the topic. I did hear about that. I think his name was Jinu. Park Chang-suk's face was full of confidence as he revealed, this time, I obtained an excellent strategy from abroad. I tested it on the player Jinu, and the results were absolutely flawless. Even so, the people across from him were a bit bewildered. Is that for real? So that's why you announced not to let word of this leak out. They were quick enough to guess the purpose. So the reason you called us here is... Park Chang-suk didn't hesitate to admit it. Exactly. He seriously made an announcement. From now on, we will conduct time trials in the third dungeon, then start preparing the lineup by summoning a creature. The key summon to conquer this dungeon is this little guy right here. Looking at that spotted Komodo, the other members were perplexed. Isn't that just a spotted Komodo dragon? Because the truth was, the spotted Komodo was a summon belonging to the spotted lizard species, roughly the size of an adult human. It had high durability and pretty decent attack power. A typical brawler type, at least, that was the common knowledge everyone knew. The basic information of one was as follows. B-rank spotted Komodo, height 170 centimeters, an all-rounder summon capable of both tanking and dealing damage. However, in reality, because it was a B-rank, it wasn't easy to nurture at all. What is this? It's total garbage. Compared to other B-ranks, both its damage output and tankiness were very mediocre, making it a summon that was frequently ignored by players. However, players had absolutely no idea that the spotted Komodo's staple food was giant slime. Just feeding it right inside the dungeon allowed it to hunt giant slimes, creating a night and day difference. Inside a high-rise building at this moment, a series of notifications popped up one after another. Beginner third dungeon, domestic first place, Park Chun-sik. Clear time, 5 minutes 31 seconds. Beginner third dungeon, domestic first place, Lee Dong-myeon. Clear time, 5 minutes 29 seconds. The participants in the test were all thrilled. Examiner, what you said was all true. We reached the final boss room in less than 4 minutes. That Komodo dragon's appetite is no joke. This little guy is literally a lifesaver. They quickly reached a conclusion, so from now on, we don't have to worry about cleaning up the aftermath anymore. We could even challenge the world record. Time kept passing, and the next day, a Cha News broadcast was on the screen. South Korea continuously breaks records in the third dungeon. Could the Yeksha of headquarters, Park Chang-suk, be the man behind this? Below was another article. Examiner Park Chang-suk gathered valuable information from abroad on the cheap. Can they challenge the world record? Reading up to this point, Park Chang-suk couldn't help but feel satisfied. This made everything even more certain. Jinu's value has far surpassed that of an ordinary first-year gamer. He himself reached a conclusion. Alright, I've decided. I'll form a specialized team dedicated strictly to Jinu. In Park Chang-suk's hands was a stack of files. As for the members laid out on the table, he muttered excitedly, these three should be fine. In another place at this moment, Jinu's hand holding his phone was shaking uncontrollably. An unhideable excitement was written all over his face. Has making money always been this easy? Mr. Park Chang-suk sure is generous. Even Ramba raised her voice. How many cream-filled pastries can we buy with this much cash? Jinu continued to open the information board. Additionally, right in front of him now was the summoning scroll storage. Low-grade summoning scroll X10000. Reading this, he muttered in satisfaction, 10,000 low-grade summoning scrolls sent by the headquarters staff this morning, huh? Jinu's smile turned slightly wicked. He kept his promise, so I've gotta fulfill my end of the deal too. He casually unscrewed a water bottle cap, then turned to the person next to him and asked, Ramba, you ready? She answered eagerly, ready. The water in the bottle was poured down gently. Now, what they were doing was actually praying before tearing open the blind bags. Dear God, Buddha, Allah, spirits of heaven and earth, Ramba enthusiastically pleaded, please let our Jinu summon a top-tier masterpiece.
A summoning ritual she had practiced since the days of the god Jinu. With the procedure done, Jinu finally took out a summoning scroll.
Alright, let's do this. With unwavering faith, he forcefully tore the scroll. The moment for the endless summoning streak began, but life always slaps you in the face at crucial moments.
Jinu collapsed flat on the ground, surrounded by a swarm of low-grade summons.
I opened 3,600 scrolls in just an hour. Something amazing should have dropped by now, right? Why is it all F ranks? Ramba poked a finger into his cheek. Dummy, of course not yet. She explained seriously, do you think an EX rank like me drops that easily? Only to be countered by Jinu, why not? Didn't I pull you on the very first try back then? Hearing that, Ramba explained simply, that was just pure luck.
Then she kindly broke down the probability of pulling one. A single scroll won't cut it, let alone one pull. It probably takes around 1,000,000 scrolls.
Jinu couldn't help but feel surprised. What are you talking about? Seeing this expression on his face, Ramba finally realized, Jinu, you really don't know anything about the summoning system, do you? Jinu blankly repeated, the summoning system? At this point, Ramba began to explain, the total number of summons is exactly equal to 10% of the player count. 8 billion people means 800 million summons. There are probably over 800 million horned caterpillars just like the ones you just pulled.
She pointed at his face as she added more.
But the important part is, Ramba's expression was dead serious, because we have an isolated status, only one unique individual exists for each type. Hearing that, Jinu was so shocked he cried out, what? Why?
But this time she could only shrug, I don't know the reason why either.
Ramba added without rushing, like I said before, the only certainty right now is that it seems only you can summon isolated EX rank entities, Jinu.
The future felt bleaker and bleaker to him.
There are tens of thousands of different summon types, and you're saying each type has up to 800 million individuals?
Jinu broke into a sweat as he calculated the odds.
And I have to pull a one-of-a-kind EX rank among them? He became depressed almost instantly. Winning consecutive mega lotteries would be easier than this. Ramba kindly offered a word of comfort, still, don't worry too much.
Then she added some other details. Once a summon has been pulled, it won't appear again unless you discard it.
For example, let's say all 800 million horned caterpillars have been fully summoned. Here's the last friend. I'm the 800 millionth friend.
If that happens, horned caterpillars will never appear in future summons again.
Hearing that, Jinu still couldn't help but feel exhausted. Even so, things are still going to be rough. At this point, Ramba could only agree, true. Having run out of options, Jinu thought about taking a gamble. Should I just start opening mid-grade scrolls?
Fortunately, his remaining sanity stopped him just in time.
No, that's way too inefficient. They're expensive, and there aren't that many available on the market anyway.
Standing up, Jinu muttered, the win rate is practically zero. But he picked up a sheet of paper and declared loudly, the win rate is practically zero. But the sound of please echoing through the sky faded away.
Ramba could only cheer enthusiastically, way to go, you can do it. In the afternoon, the sunset sky cast a warm hue over the roof. Jinu put his hands around his neck and groaned, I'm about to die here.
Ramba lay face down on a pillow and piped up, Jinu, I want cream bread. He sat there dazed, pinching her cheek while thinking. Thinking back, I blew through 6 months' worth of earnings in just 2 weeks. Ramba screamed in both panic and worry, those dark circles under your eyes.
Jinu was literally pushing himself to the brink in more ways than one. Jinu glanced slightly to one side. He put both hands on his head, his eyes staring up at the ceiling.
I even had to rent a room near the player zone just to synthesize these spirits. She murmured softly, cream bread.
Anyway, I can't just keep leeching off mom and dad forever.
He sat up, propping his hands on the mattress, then let's go do some more synthesis today.
Get up, Ramba.
She stretched her body out, her voice full of excitement. Cream bread. The general store, formerly Hotel 20, which was only a recent change. After the Tower of Trials appeared, other buildings also began to change accordingly. For instance, this hotel building suddenly transformed into a general store. I remember the buffet here used to be pretty famous back then.
Jinu and Ramba stood in front of a machine.
He looked down at the number on the paper and said softly, number 125. She flew up beside him to give instructions. Jinu, you can't make any mistakes.
Make sure to look closely before putting them in. Got it?
He smiled and replied confidently, of course.
Jinwoo glanced at the screen and saw that his number was up. It's our turn. Let's go in. The two stepped into a room.
He spoke to her, I'm counting on you again today, Ramba. She fluttered her wings and replied, we got this. The system screen quickly materialized before Jinwoo's eyes. Lines of text gradually appeared. Welcome to the general store.
Please try synthesizing your summons.
Wind Spirit has been registered.
He reached out and pressed the button on the screen. Do you want to synthesize Wind Spirit?
Yes. Information began to flood in continuously.
F-rank Fire Lizard has been sacrificed and vanished. F-rank Fire Lizard has been sacrificed and vanished. F-rank Fire Lizard has been sacrificed and vanished. F-rank Blue Bat has been sacrificed and vanished. F-rank Blue Bat has been sacrificed and vanished. F-rank Blue Bat has been sacrificed and vanished. F-rank Venom Lizard has been sacrificed and vanished. F-rank Venom Lizard has been sacrificed and vanished.
He watched, completely dizzy from the sight.
Wow, that really is a lot. The mechanical sound from the system echoed, synthesis complete. The level of the EX rank Wind Spirit has increased to 21. The intellect stat of the EX rank Wind Spirit has increased by 2.
Jinwoo clapped, but his face didn't look happy at all.
I've burned through 140,000 summons. And she's only managed to hit level 21? Ramba asked eagerly in a hurry, how is it? Do you see how strong I am, Jinwoo?
He chuckled as he answered, thinking to himself, our Ramba is the best. But the max level is 100, at this rate, God knows when we'll ever finish.
A few days later, inside a massive high-rise building, the sound of clicking keyboards echoed alongside a humming tune.
Park Chang-suk said with a beaming face, hey Byung-jin, you seem in much higher spirits than usual today, huh?
He could only bow his head and reply, yes, sir.
Park Chang-suk flipped through the documents while thinking to himself, now that we've set up a talent management team, I'll pour all my resources into Jinwoo to take over this region. Park Chang-suk suddenly turned around to ask him, Byung-jin, what is Jinwoo up to right now? He turned his face over and answered with a hum, well, it looks like he's just continuously opening summoning scrolls.
He picked up even more scrolls again today. Holding the files in his hand, his expression turned slightly surprised, there's still more?
Byung-jin continued to add, he even asked if he could use the 150 million he just received to buy more low-grade summoning scrolls. Park Chang-suk lowered the stack of papers to look at him. What did you say? Byung-jin put his hand to his chin, his eyes rolling elsewhere. He asked if he could buy them below market price, so for now I told him I'd look into it.
But lately the Bureau has been keeping an eye on us because of these continuous bulk acquisitions. What should we do? He lowered his gaze to the pile of papers in his hand and thought, he's reinvesting a massive fortune into low-grade summoning scrolls that are basically unsellable? Something is definitely going on.
Park Chang-suk clenched his fist and spoke up, sell them to him at half price.
Hearing this, Byung-jin leaped out of his seat in shock. What? Half price? Hearing this, Byung-jin leaped out of his seat in shock. What? Half price?
Park Chang-suk suddenly smiled meaningfully, don't worry too much.
Jinwoo might just become South Korea's hero in the future. And if it's revealed later on that I went out of my way to support him through all difficulties, gaining an even higher approval rating will be a walk in the park. He placed his hands on the table and spoke, for now, just do as I say. He placed his hands on the table and spoke, for now, just do as I say. The scene changed, the sun was now shining brightly outside on the street. Jinwoo sat completely withered in an empty lot, counting scrolls. 1556, 1557, 1558. Ramba spoke up tiredly, Jinwoo, how much longer do we have to keep doing this? I can't feel my arms anymore.
He replied with an emotionless tone, until either I die or you die. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed, and someone slowly walked over. The person spoke up, drawing the attention of both of them, hello. She smiled, putting her hands on her hips, and said, great to meet you.
I'm Ji-ah from headquarters. Jinwoo stood up, scratching his head as he replied, yeah, hi. What brings you all the way out here?
Ji-ah held out her hand and explained, I came here because I'm here to discuss purchasing the summoning scroll you talked about with the examiner last time.
He instantly caught on and replied right away, oh, right. Like I mentioned last time, is there any chance we could renegotiate the price?
She placed a hand on her cheek, smiled, and said, actually, we already held an internal meeting about that.
And after considering your recent contributions, Mr. Baek Jinu, Jia beamed and continued, just this once, we've decided to give you a special discount of 50% off. Hearing this, he was completely stunned. Seriously? Mr. Park Chang-suk is the absolute best. She quickly added, yep. And on top of that,
Jinu was incredibly thrilled to hear Jia's words. Our team has decided to provide you with an additional 100 million won in support. This is drawn from the reward fund for talented managers. She walked over, putting a finger to her lips to signal him, however, you must keep this an absolute secret. He quickly clapped his hands in excitement. Oh man, of course, don't worry about a thing. Jia leaned in close to Jinu's ear and whispered, and we hope you understand that this is to build a good relationship between you and our side. Mr. Baek Jinu. He was absolutely ecstatic and replied super fast, I completely understand. After saying her piece, she stepped back, getting ready to leave. Well, you must be busy, so I'll take my leave now. Jinu stood still, watching Jia's receding back. He smiled and thought to himself, I can really feel that examiner's goodwill in wanting to support me to the fullest. I need to quickly summon an EX rank to repay him. As afternoon gradually turned into evening, a completely exhausted Ramba collapsed face first onto the pile of papers on the ground. Jinu, how much longer are we going to do this? I keep praying for just a little more. My arms are literally on fire. He replied to her blankly, until we roll the trainer and the dragon mage. Ramba cried out, pulling at two tufts of her own hair and screaming, I think I'm going crazy from this paper-tearing sound. Suddenly, a system notification rang out, you have received an F-rank white snake. I have no choice. Another notification popped up, you have received an F-rank giant beetle. Another notification popped up, you have received an F-rank giant beetle. The moment Jinu's hands tore the paper in half, a blinding light instantly appeared. Please. A loud clap of thunder boomed. The paper tore into 4 pieces and flew high into the air. What the hell is that? Jinu instantly recalled the scene from before. This effect was exactly the same as when Ramba appeared. Standing next to him, her eyes also lit up as she watched. Could it be? Currently using a low-grade summoning scroll. A system notification appeared. Player Baek Jinu has received the EX rank summon, Dragon Mage. Ramba excitedly hugged him tightly. You did it. You actually did it. Jinu was so happy that he even started crying tears of joy. Oh my god, I could die right now and be happy. Jinu immediately snapped back into focus. Wait, this is no time to rest. We can't stop now, we have to ride this gacha momentum. Standing next to him, she blanked out upon hearing that. Gacha momentum? He reached out and pulled out another scroll. Right at the exact moment it burst with energy. Jinu aggressively tore it open. When you're on a hot streak, you gotta push your luck to get even more. Currently using a low-grade summoning scroll, player Baek Jinu has received the EX rank summon, Trainer. Ramba looked at the system panel in disbelief. Gacha momentum is a real thing? He bit his lip in sheer joy. Finally, Jinu looked at the figures in front of him and thought to himself. Ultimately, those two were also standing there, looking back at him. I actually summoned them. Hongyo raised his head, looked around, and asked, where is this? A system screen immediately popped up. The EX rank summon, Trainer, has been summoned. Originally, this was a summon that barely anyone liked because it was just an E rank with terrible combat capabilities. Jinu excitedly clenched his fist, but his true value lies in the fact that he's a total training maniac, a total psycho who knows nothing but training. Do you think training is a joke? Possesses a skill that grants massive growth through training, overwhelmingly captivating other summons. Hongyo himself is very weak, and his basic skills are nothing special. Give me 5,000 push-ups. I don't know the meaning of fatigue, but once he acquires the trainer skill through growth, the trainer unlocks the hidden potential of other summons and drastically boosts their growth rate to an extraordinary degree. The version of Ramba in his imagination suddenly became terrifying. Ramba, with this skill, I can make other summons stronger. This is exactly how I'll always stay ahead of the other rankers. She immediately showed her distaste. I really don't want to get any stronger, Jinu. Jinu smiled, turned around, and waved at him. Hongyo, long time no see. Hearing him say that, he grimaced. Hongyo? That nickname. Hongyo instantly recognized Jinu. Could it be that you are Jinu God? He put his hands on his hips and tilted his face up to reply, that's right. He quickly dropped to one knee with deep respect.
Sir, this is incredible. After being placed in an unknown isolated state, I thought I would never get to see you again. Jinwoo just listened in silence, thinking to himself, just as I thought. Both Ramba and Hongyo developed exactly the way I raised them. Hongyo bowed his head low, his voice loud and clear. It is an honor to meet you again. Pokryong also slowly took a step forward. Mr. Jinwoo God, she asked a bit shyly, is it really you? Jinwoo God. He thought to himself in sheer amazement, this is literally the first time I've ever heard Pokryong's voice. A D-rank mage-type summoner, Dragon Mage. Summon Dragon Mage, human race, S-rank, isolated. She was a magic school dropout, but it turns out an ancient explosive dragon was sleeping deep within her heart, making her a powerful, heavy-hitting fire element assassin. Her initial skills were also very mediocre. But what would happen if Hongyo awakened them? Possess skill, explosive dragon wave unleashes dragon-shaped flames forward. Devour permanently increases the damage of explosive dragon wave. Every time she defeats a final boss-level enemy with this skill, she gains a broken skill called Devour. Since it's impossible to unlock that Devour skill without Hongyo, I am the only player who can utilize Pokryong to her full potential. Pokryong was incredibly thrilled to see Jinwoo. Mr. Jinwoo God, I really missed you so much. He felt a bit proud, the corners of his mouth curving up slightly. Yeah, me too. A dangerously adorable great dragon. Jinwoo composed himself and gave an order, for now, don't say anything when other people are around. And instead of Jinwoo God, just call me Jinwoo. Hearing this, the two immediately obeyed. Understood. Yes, sir. Understood, Mr. Jinwoo. He shoved his hands into his pockets and looked up at the sky. Alright, now let's go home and get some sleep. Inside the quiet room, with the curtains half drawn, Jinwoo lay stretched out on the bed, looking completely drained. The three spirits sat down below, huddling close together. Hongyo struck up a conversation. It's been a while, hasn't it? Pokryong hastily replied, it really has. He glanced down at Ramba, and you, should I call you Ramba? Her eyes sparkled as she looked up at Hongyo. You're Hongyo, right? We only met for about a month before we were separated. Isn't that right? Since I was already an active summon by the time you were recruited, that makes me your senior. He crossed his arms, looking unbothered, if you say so. Suddenly, Hongyo's expression noticeably darkened. However, that means absolutely nothing to me. I only have one thing to say. With a grim look on his face, he leaned down toward the two girls. We are too weak. We still have a long way to go if we want to be of use to him in the future. That's why, even while he's asleep, we must keep training. Hongyo pointed directly at her. First, Pokryong, sit down and focus on sensing mana. Once I awaken, I will unlock Devour for you. Pokryong nodded slightly at him. Devour, got it. Hongyo quickly shot a sharp glare at Ramba. Seeing this, Ramba began to tremble violently, her face filled with sheer terror. You need to increase your sword swing speed, so from now on, you'll be doing physical training with me. Physical training? Ramba cried out in protest, but I'm a spirit. A flash of light gleamed in Hongyo's eyes. Don't you want to help our master? Ramba stammered in reply, well, of course I do. His eyes immediately locked onto something in the kitchen, then start swinging that frying pan. Since today is the first day, we'll just do a light workout of 5,000 reps. Hearing this, Ramba was utterly horrified. 5,000? Ramba's hand trembled as she desperately tried to reach out toward him. Jinwoo. Before she could call for help, she was hauled away by Hongyo like a piece of luggage. Please save me. Early in the morning, a gentle breeze blew across the city. Inside the room, a voice rang out. What? You're saying you can't give me any more low-grade summoning scrolls? Jia replied with one hand on her hip and the other raised. That's right. The office just issued a notice. It's a direct order from the head director of headquarters. Park Chang-suk was currently a bit anxious as he thought to himself, from the director? He's supposed to be extremely busy, so why is he suddenly keeping tabs on these minor matters? She continued to add more details, making his expression grow worse by the second. In addition, they are demanding a detailed explanation regarding the use of all the low-grade summoning scrolls received up until now. Park Chang-suk gritted his teeth and cursed, damn it. Jia raised a hand to rub her chin. It looks like Director Im Hee-soo has already poked his nose into this matter. His mind was in a mess as he asked, that bastard is always looking for ways to oppose my opinions. She crossed her arms and sighed, what should we do now? I've already prepared the explanation documents, but if the administration cuts off the scroll supply, we won't have anything left to hand over to Jinwoo. Park Chang-suk clenched his fist and began to calculate. It was almost time to deliver the next batch of goods. Suddenly, he remembered something, and his eyes widened in surprise. Park Chang-suk glanced at the phone ringing on the desk. Seeing this, she stepped closer and asked, "What is it?" He spoke with a stern, powerful voice. "It looks like we won't need to provide him with any more low-grade summoning scrolls." Park Chang-suk frowned, staring intently at her. More importantly, he didn't say anything else out loud, only thinking to himself that he really needed to settle the score with that bastard Im Hee-soo. A few lines of messages popped up on the phone on the desk. "I don't need many low-grade summoning scrolls anymore. I got what I wanted. Thanks." The scene shifts to Mount Gwanak, near Seonboi Station, Hwacheon City, Gyeonggi Province. Jinwoo set foot on the ground and let out a sigh of relief. He raised a hand to shade his eyes from the sunlight. "So this is a regular dungeon." In BOS, there are 4 types of dungeons: the Tower of Trials, Daily Dungeons, Regular Dungeons, and the Chaos Dragon. First is the Daily Dungeon, where players can gather specific materials every day. Second is the Tower of Trials. Its difficulty is straight out of hell compared to a regular dungeon. This is the place for players to test their absolute limits. The rewards are extremely generous, but the mortality rate is correspondingly high. Third, the Chaos Dragon. That's a raid boss that you have to form a party to challenge. But since it hasn't been updated yet, I'll save that explanation for later. Except for those 3 types, all other places are considered regular dungeons. That's exactly where I'll be entering this time. Jinwoo checked his phone as he walked. In BOS, they are also called layered dungeons, but in reality, they just appear completely at random. He stopped in front of a massive mountain. Ahead of Jinwoo was a gate along with a no entry sign. He lowered his head and scanned the area. After a dungeon is created and a certain amount of time passes, a dungeon break phenomenon will occur, and monsters will flood outside. I need to clear this as fast as possible. As Jinwoo approached, the gatekeeper spoke up. "If you're planning to enter the dungeon, I'll need to check your permit first." He pulled out his identification card and handed it over. "Here." The man took it and quickly looked it over. "All right, everything checks out." Jinwoo didn't say another word and immediately stepped through the gate. "Please be careful in there." A flash of light gleamed. Jinwoo slowly opened his eyes. Violent streaks of lightning instantly appeared all around him. The clashing sound of metal rang out crystal clear in the quiet space. A massive crowd of people was rushing in, attacking one another. So this was the scene right now, both gloomy and chaotic. A conquest dungeon? The soldiers began to shout loudly. The orcs were advancing, pouring boiling water down on them. The massive orcs kept climbing up, sending the crowd into a panic. Die! They quickly shot it right through the head, sending it crashing down. Back when it was just BOS, it was only a game, so it didn't feel realistic at all. But seeing that, a giant orc charged forward to strike back. Another person quickly ran over to help up a teammate who had just been knocked down. "Healer. We need a healer over here." Jinwoo's face darkened as he witnessed the scene. Is this what real war actually looks like? He closed his eyes, reassuring himself. Gotta calm down, I just need to do what I always do. A layer of shield quickly enveloped Jinwoo. He shouted out loud, and all 3 of them materialized at once. A system panel appeared. The EX rank Wind Spirit has been summoned. The EX rank Trainer has been summoned. The EX rank Dragon Mage has been summoned. Next, 2 more panels popped up. The D rank Metallic Spirit has been summoned. The D rank Mini Kong has been summoned. Among D rank summons and healers, no one is better than these guys. Sorry about that. Bong Su was sacrificed for Mini Kong. Jinwoo looked over at her and commanded, "Ramba, buff Hungyo's attack speed." She smiled brightly and acknowledged the order. "You got it." He looked over at her next and called out, "Pokreon, get ready to provide fire support for Hungyo from the back." She gripped her magic staff tightly and replied, "Yes, sir." Jinwoo waved his hand forward. Mini Kong charged straight toward the orc boss. It instantly leaped incredibly high, gearing up to attack. The rules of the Orc Conquest dungeon were very simple. A massive explosion boomed, shattering the surrounding earth and rocks. Mini Kong was currently standing face to face with the crowd of giant orcs. Just take down the giant orc boss at the very back, and everything will be over. Seeing someone attacking it, the orc raised its weapon high and let out a massive roar.
The orc swung down powerfully toward its head, but it raised its arms to block the blow. Ramba stood on the sidelines, continuously buffing their strength as they moved forward. Hongyo just watched in silence without saying a word. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the fortress wall. His eyes flashed with light, and with just a few swift sword strikes, he cut down a significant number of orcs. He was on a completely different level compared to how Hongyo was at the start of the game. He rubbed his chin and smiled. Well, it looks like this is going to be easier than I thought. The soldiers were overjoyed to see reinforcements arriving. Allies are here. They're crazy strong. Are we actually going to survive? Mini Kong growled and lunged at the giant orcs. Meanwhile, the metallic spirit continuously restored their health. HP plus HP plus HP plus. Ramba easily dodged the attacks thrown by the orcs while taunting them. Boo-hoo, are we mad yet? Jinu was completely terrified. Having almost gotten blasted just a moment ago, Ramba, stop fooling around. Hearing his voice, she snapped around in surprise. My bad. Hongyo charged out of nowhere and landed a heavy punch on it. How dare you throw an axe at my master? Die. Only now did Pokryong raise her magic staff, chanting spells in an incomprehensible language. She conjured a massive source of fire and directed it to fly upward. Go! A dragon quickly shot out from the magic staff into the open. Explosive fire dragon. The explosive fire dragon unleashed dragon-shaped flames forward. The orcs screamed from the intense heat of the fire. Even so, there were some that, despite being burned to that extent, still desperately tried to stand their ground. The rapid clattering sound of boots echoed in a hurried rhythm. Hongyo didn't hesitate to deliver a fatal blow to it. The giant orc's head dropped to the ground like a ball. A mechanical voice rang out, dungeon cleared. Ramba excitedly threw her hands up in the air. Absolutely awesome. Pokryong had also leveled up. The level of the EX rank Dragon Mage has increased to 5. The intelligence stat of the EX rank Dragon Mage has increased by 2. Not to be outdone, he also leveled up alongside her. The level of the EX rank Trainer has increased to 5. The critical rate of the EX rank Trainer has increased by 1%. As for Jinu, he received a gift from the system. Your reward has arrived. Mid-grade Summoning Scroll X1. His eyes widened in absolute shock. Holy cow. A mid-grade Summoning Scroll costs a whopping 500,000 won. I just made 500,000 in only 3 minutes. While the spirits were cheering happily, Jinu was already thinking about something else. I need to find the next dungeon right away. Congrats on leveling up. He clenched his hand into a tight fist. Jinu felt as if a whole new horizon had opened up for him. It was time to change his life by grinding non-stop. The scene changes to the front of a massive, luxurious building. A gloomy Park Chang-suk rested his chin on his hands, looking down at the desk. Jia stood beside him with her arms crossed and asked, "Where exactly did you get the confidence to place a bet like that?" He replied sullenly, "But that bastard started it first." The director sitting in the middle raised his hands to soothe them. "Come on now, everyone please calm down." Haya sneered, speaking bluntly, "It seems like examiner Park Chang-suk is wasting the budget, so I was merely offering a bit of advice." What kind of talent management team can't even properly train a single decent talent? The talents trained by examiner Park Chang-suk haven't even been chosen as national representatives a single time, right? Are you acting out like this because the third dungeon record was just set recently? Is it really just because of that one thing? No matter how furious Park Chang-suk was, he only dared to voice it in his head. Imhisu, that absolute bastard. I want to say something back, but the rankers Imhisu trains really are chosen as national representatives every single year. He might be an obnoxious, arrogant prick, but he definitely has the skills. But I'm not just going to sit here and take this anymore. After thinking it through carefully, he finally spoke up and asked, "What are you going to do if the talent I train gets chosen as a national representative?" Haya tilted his face up, his voice dripping with condescension. "Oh, so you want to make a bet on that? There are only a maximum of 10 national representative slots anyway. Let's see whose talent climbs to a higher rank." His expression shifted instantly as he replied, "Fine by me." He smiled deviously, leaning in close to say, "The loser has to publicly admit the other examiner is superior and resign. The penalty fee for breaking the agreement is 1 billion won." Park Chang-suk didn't back down either, countering immediately, "Should we draw up the contract right now?" The director sitting in the middle tried to intervene in a fluster. "Please stop fighting." Park Chang-suk didn't back down either, countering immediately, "Should we draw up the contract right now?" The director sitting in the middle tried to intervene in a fluster. "Please stop fighting." He lowered his head slightly, closing his eyes as he replied, I know.
Suddenly, the movements of Park Chang-suk's fingers froze. But I have faith in Jinwoo. The way he operates will definitely provide us with critical information. Hearing that, she was about to add more but was cut deaf. Even if you say so. Suddenly, Director Chang-suk noticed something unusual and stood up from his chair. What's going on? Byung-jin frantically reported, you told me to investigate the player who recently solo cleared dozens of D-rank dungeons. It turns out that player is Jinwoo. He and Ji-ah practically screamed, unable to believe their ears. What? She asked him again in utter bewilderment. A new player who registered less than a month ago cleared a D-rank dungeon in under 5 minutes? Park Chang-suk burst out into a thoroughly satisfied laugh. See? I told you so. He was so incredibly excited that he threw both hands into the air. What did I tell you? Didn't I say Jinwoo is the absolute GOAT? That word hard is way too outdated. Even though he was thrilled, Park Chang-suk still thought with a bit of lingering panic, yes, I always believed in you. On Jinwoo's side, he stepped out of the dungeon gate. Jinwoo looked around and thought to himself, my eye for people is truly spot on. Inside the small room, the light from the ceiling cast down. Jinwoo looked at his account balance in pure excitement, laughing so hard his cheeks turned completely red. 16 million won. I actually made a whopping 16 million won. Flashbacks of the past few days flashed through Jinwoo's mind. Grinding like a madman through 160 D-rank dungeons over 4 straight days, everyone fighting together. He looked at the pile of money, unable to stop himself from crying tears of joy. And this is the amount gathered after selling off every single mid-grade summoning scroll. This is truly my literal sweat, blood, and tears. Weren't we the ones doing all the sweating? Finally, my time has come. Jinwoo jumped out of bed to calculate the numbers. Alright, first things first, I need to split this money into different accounts. This account will be for living expenses, rent, utilities, food, and other miscellaneous items. And this is the savings account. I'll put 10 million won in here every month to look after myself. He suddenly looked at his phone, lost in thought. Earning 10 million a month felt like a dream. Jinwoo checked the balance on his phone and ultimately decided to use it to top up the game. This account was strictly for players. Every penny here will go strictly toward investing in the summons. Money is just part of it. What matters most right now is increasing my own value as a player. While I was grinding dungeons, the kids all passed level 30, so it's time to equip and upgrade their runes. The only way to do that is by grinding dungeons daily. Jinwoo pondered for a moment and muttered to himself, to clear dungeons daily as fast as possible, I need a core summoning squad. He used his phone to open the application. I wonder if there's anything good on the market right now? Jinwoo was so shocked he dropped his jaw. He shouted when he looked at the price board. What the? A C rank costs 20 million on average? Why is it so extortionate? Thunderbank is 20 million. B rank goes up to 200 million, and A rank or S rank are so rare you can't even find anyone selling them. At this rate, my account will vanish in the blink of an eye. Jinwoo sighed and held his phone close. Using a premium summon scroll, the rate for a B rank is only 1%, so that price is understandable. He immediately pulled himself together. But it doesn't matter. Jinwoo navigated his phone to open someone's personal profile. He hit the call button and pressed the phone to his ear. This is exactly why I've prepared a backup plan. Tae-sip burst through the door and shouted, appraiser. Park Chang-suk was sitting inside and asked calmly, what's all the rush about? He replied anxiously, we just received a new request from the player Jinwoo. Upon hearing that, the man jumped in surprise. What? Park Chang-suk changed his attitude and went to grab Tae-sip's hand. What did he request? Tell me quickly. You scared the life out of me. What kind of person is so full of fur? He thought the guy was strange, but he had no choice. He said if we agree, he'll provide new information. Tae-sip held the phone up in front of Park Chang-suk. Here, this is the content. A shopping list for summons. After reading it, the man's eyes nearly popped out. He wants to buy all of this? The guy saw his reaction and just had to explain, he wants us to pay to buy all of this stuff. Park Chang-suk held his head in worry. If the headquarters were willing to spend money on all this, I wouldn't be using C-rank summons. Did he say what he would give in return if we bought it? Tae-sip's next words made him feel less worried. He promised to share the secret to conquering dungeons daily in the shortest time possible. Park Chang-suk looked up at him. Not just the second or fourth dungeon, but all the dungeons for the week? Tae-sip answered quickly, yes, that's right. He put his hands on his hips, pondering. He means he'll reveal everything, not just one. That's a tough deal. Park Chang-suk smiled broadly, revealing his teeth. Alright, I understand the situation. Let me try to negotiate directly with the director. A while later, he slammed his hand on the table in frustration. It's infuriating. Those stubborn old men are just foolish geezers. Park Chang-suk stood up angrily. No wonder our country is always at the bottom of the rankings. Baek Jin-yu asked, confused, what's wrong with him? Jia understood, so she was unfazed by the scene. The proposal wasn't approved, but in reality, the request was a bit outrageous. She crossed her arms and sighed, watching him yell to vent his frustration. I wish every appraiser was as passionate as he is. He approached and asked, so, what did the director tell you? Park Chang-suk's face turned red with anger as he replied, the old man said I have to provide evidence or let him demonstrate first before they'll even consider spending the money. Hearing him speak made Jia think. Without support summons, how is he supposed to clear the stages? Park Chang-suk clenched his fists and shouted fiercely. If that information is true, isn't it a huge explosion? It's basically an exposed gold mine. Yet those idiots at headquarters don't realize its value. She suddenly spoke up, calming him down. That does sound disappointing. Selling such a sweet piece of information to headquarters for only 1.3 billion. Don't you think that price is way too cheap? Park Chang-suk was confused and hesitated before asking, only 1.3 billion? Jia put her hand on her chin and spoke slowly, Mr. Appraiser. She smiled and made an offer. How about I pay for this out of my own pocket? Park Chang-suk stared at her in astonishment. Now I remember. Jia is part of the Daesung Group family. Jia, the fourth granddaughter of Daesung, the leading economic conglomerate in South Korea. She was raised according to the standards of a wealthy heiress, but Jia was more interested in players than managing the company. And the player who caught her eye most recently was none other than Jinwoo, a newcomer who held an unbelievable amount of information and was even bold enough to negotiate with the government. Right, how about we set up a separate management team just to serve him? We'll invest heavily so he can extract all the information, and then we'll share the profits. Our approach will be completely different from the current talent management team. He asked again, are you sure? That's a lot of money. Jia wasn't worried at all, her tone was incredibly cheerful. Are you worried about my bank account balance? Park Chang-suk smiled bitterly and replied, of course not. Jia crossed her arms, tapping her fingers lightly on her arm. You don't need to worry about money. But before we decide, she smiled and continued to state her own request, I need to meet Jinwoo one more time. Jia sat with her hands on the table, legs crossed, as if waiting for someone. She heard a sound and turned her face slightly. The employees in the shop bowed respectfully. Please make yourself at home, customer. Jinwoo walked in and turned to look at him. Feeling a bit nervous, he rubbed his neck and thought, does the headquarters show sincerity? I am responding to what you requested last time. Shall we meet in person to discuss the details? I will send you the address in time. Who would have thought they would act so quickly for just one piece of information? 1.3 billion is not an easy sum to earn. Right now, I'm sitting in a high-end restaurant that would make a 5-star hotel step aside. I'm being treated so well I don't even know how to react. It was definitely worth selling that information. A voice rang out, cutting through Jinwoo's train of thought. You're here? Jinwoo glanced over to where the voice came from and saw her getting up. I almost fainted when I looked up her background. Appearance, family background, ability, a genius of the century, sky-high selection scores. I never expected the third-generation granddaughter of the Daesung conglomerate to work for the headquarters. Jia stepped forward, placed a hand on her chest, and greeted him politely. Thank you for coming. He saw she was alone and wondered, are you here by yourself? Are you here by yourself? Jia smiled brightly and answered, that's right. What I want to talk to you about today has nothing to do with the headquarters, it's a personal matter. Both sat at the table and began to chat. So it's a pity that. She placed a hand on her cheek and said to Jinwoo, I'm afraid the headquarters will find it difficult to provide any further support. Appraiser Park Chang-suk tried his best, but there are too many people opposing it. Who are you trying to fool? He said while picking up some food. If that's how the headquarters is, then there's nothing we can do. Regardless, I'll take the #1 spot myself. I won't provide them with any more information. Suddenly, Jia added something that made Jinu pause. Instead, I have a proposal.
He stopped moving and looked up at her.
Excuse me? Jia placed a glass of water in front of Jinu. Just for you, Jinu.
I am planning to establish a private management company. He was a bit surprised by her words. A management company with only one person.
That proposal doesn't sound bad.
Unlike the headquarters, which has to operate cautiously, a private organization only chases profits, and I can completely provide those profits. But more importantly, what I need right now is a connection to someone who values my information the most and has the resources for me to utilize.
Jia spoke again, interrupting those thoughts. Together with Daesung's professionalism, I'm ready to support everything Jinu needs. Jinu couldn't help but get excited and ponder, where would I find a better place than Daesung? Ultimately, money never lies.
He happily finished his glass of water before speaking. We've only met a few times, but you seem like a very wonderful person. Jia also laughed brightly and praised Jinu. With talent like Jinu's, that's only natural. Then I will explain the details along with the contract.
If you agree, tomorrow I will visit that empty plot. By the way, you should check the summon you requested.
He was a bit surprised that things were moving a bit quickly.
So soon? I haven't even signed the contract yet.
She suddenly bowed her head, her voice dropping a little.
Well, I prepared everything in advance.
Regardless of what your decision might be,
just consider it a gift.
Jinu's eyes sparkled as he looked at Jia.
That's crazy. A wealthy heiress buying things like that.
The scene changed to the side of a mountain.
Jean walked along, complaining. Appa, is he coming here again today?
She looked extremely gloomy.
What has he been so busy with lately that he isn't in touch?
I heard he even has his own place now. Suddenly someone walked past, making her look up. It was her. Looking at Jia, she couldn't help but praise her in her heart.
She's so beautiful, isn't she? Wait a minute. Her face looks like someone I've seen on Insta before.
Jean put her hand on her chin, trying to recall everything from her memory. She immediately remembered the post she had seen. Jean was so excited her mouth hung open.
Isn't that girl you, Jia?
In the blindingly bright sun, the sound of heavy breathing echoed.
Hongyo was burning with determination and shouted, more, more.
You have to push yourself to the limit to grow. Ramba's sweat formed a puddle, his face haggard as he replied, I've reached my limit. He seemed to notice something, and his eyes darted around. Hongyo took off his glasses and whispered to both of them, everyone, stay quiet.
Someone is coming. Don't talk. Ramba quickly lay down on Jinu's head.
Taking a short break, he turned around and saw Jiao approaching. You're here. She kept using her hand to fan herself.
Yes, hello. It looks like you've been training since this morning, right? Ramba quickly regained his vitality and flew up. That's right, just light training. Along with your summons? So that's how you build your team. There are a few summons I've never seen before. Jinu waved his hand, signaling them to leave. That's right, that's my main force. Go back to training, I'll introduce you formally later.
Jia reached out and took something.
Alright, first I'll give you a gift.
In front of him, a system board suddenly appeared with huge letters written on it.
Player GI is proposing a trade.
Please review the other party's offer carefully. Just like in the game Battle of Summoners, which supports trading between players, fast-selling summons at a discount when buying in bulk.
I want to trade an A-rank Sky Seal Gom for another A-rank.
Selling 2 500 items, price is 2,000 reward reset tickets to give a quote. I have a mutated A-rank speed technique, accepting trades.
D-rank speed technique, pressure technique.
If you dare to scam and run away, he points at the scammer and calls out, that guy did it, you could die from a curse from the system window.
An offer appeared that made Jinu ponder. Jia's trade list. Jinu, did she really get all of them? Do you accept the trade with player Jia?
His body was suddenly covered by a faint blue light.
The trade is complete.
Jinu was extremely appreciative and bowed repeatedly.
Thank you so much. That is an extremely valuable gift.
Jia smiled brightly and crossed her arms, replying, it's nothing. She opened her bag and rummaged around inside.
Then she held a piece of paper in front of him and asked, shall we start working?
She quickly explained to him, I took the name of the management company from our family names. 70% of the shares belong to Jinu, 25% to me, and 5% will go to appraiser Park Chang-suk. The appraiser will stay at the headquarters and continue to support us. We also plan to hire Byung-jin and Tae-sip as staff. But aren't those two at the headquarters? They submitted their resignations this morning because I offered them triple their old salary. Jinna held the paper in his hand and hesitated slightly. But I'm truly grateful. But 70% for me? Are you sure yet? Jia said calmly to him, consider it my way of placing a bet. Even if I only have 25%, I believe I can still maximize the value of that figure. Her gaze immediately became sharp. Furthermore, since this is a one-person company, voting rights aren't important. What's important is the relationship between me and Jinu. She glanced at him as he was providing his fingerprint and thought to herself, now is the time to put aside greed and strengthen our relationship. Jinna pulled out an ink pad, pressed his hand into it, and then printed his thumb onto the paper. Jia was overjoyed to see this. The contract was complete, and the two happily shook hands. Well, I look forward to working with you. Likewise, on Hongyo's side, he accidentally saw something. He saw it and just kept staring at that exact spot. Then, in a flash, Hongyo jumped inside, leaving Jia confused. What? What was that? A loud scream from inside the bushes echoed out. He dragged 2 feet along, pulling her roughly. Hongyo hung Jin upside down and shook her back and forth continuously. Auto hunt. Jinu saw her here and asked, Jin, what are you doing here? Jinu frowned slightly and questioned her, what do you mean? Jin, in a disheveled state, didn't answer but shifted her eyes to avoid him. He immediately guessed it right away and said, are you stalking Jia because you're a fan? She immediately retorted upon hearing that, what stalking? I was just curious so I came along. Jia is already gone. Jinu's accusatory tone struck Jin's heart immediately. Then that's clearly stalking someone, isn't it? He sighed, bent down, and asked further, and when you got here, you were even peeking and observing us. She was unwilling to accept it and shouted angrily, alright, fine, I'm wrong. Jin angrily rushed forward to question him, but what about you? How do you even know each other? She widened her eyes and kept questioning him, you must have used some trick, right? Why are you two going around together? Jinu rolled his eyes, speechless, and silently lamented, my head hurts so much. He mused thoughtfully. The contract had a clause about family, so sooner or later they would meet anyway. At the time, Jia had promised, I was planning to greet your family anyway, so this is convenient. Jin heard that and mumbled, devastated, Jia wants to meet me? Seeing that, Jinu was speechless and silently added, but not right at this moment. The next second, she suddenly lay down, throwing a tantrum. Tell me quickly. Being petulant, he couldn't take it anymore inside. Jinu pondered for a moment before speaking. Here's what happened. After hearing it all, Jin concluded. In summary, you were a well-known gamer before, and you're the one who just broke the record in the low-level dungeon? She skeptically came to a conclusion, that's why you met Jia when you went to headquarters. He nodded sluggishly in agreement. That's right. Jin fell into deep thought after hearing that. The question that followed made Jinu jump. I remember you used to play some mobile game for a long time, was it that one? He hurriedly denied it, no, not at all. That was a different game. I only played Battle of Summoners for about a year. In his heart, he couldn't help but tell himself, I still can't reveal that I'm Saint Jinu. She exclaimed with great interest, even if you only played for a year, that's already a very long time for a piece of trash game like that. Each and every word was like a needle pricking Jinu's heart. Even so, facing Jin's teasing, he could only smile helplessly. Who would have thought his gaming addiction would be useful at a time like this? Looking at the innocent face before him, a thought rose in Jinu's heart. It's not that I don't trust you, that thought quietly arose in his mind. But there are risks in everything. The painful memories of that year suddenly flooded back, making Jinu clench his resolve. I can't let the loved ones who have taken care of me for the past 3 years fall into danger. His gaze gradually became determined. I need to become stronger to protect my family, then I'll think about revealing my identity. At this moment, she suddenly muttered, but why did you only tell me now? Jinu scratched his head and replied lightly, I was going to tell you anyway. And there's nothing to hide. I'll explain it to Mom and Dad later, so remember to keep this a secret for a while. Jin asked huffily, what?
You have your own reasons, I understand.
Meanwhile, they could only stand there screaming in vain.
Hongyo looked on coldly. The black elf cub Pokryong was sitting on top of Ramba.
While he was pouncing on it, Jinna suddenly spoke up, "Oh, and one more thing, about that black elf." She was startled and wondered why she had such an expression. His voice deepened, "If you intend to raise it, you should get a black wolf to use with it. Without it, you won't even be able to unleash 10% of its power."
Jean was tapping on her phone and asked curiously, "A black wolf? Is there that kind of summon?" Jinna clicked his tongue and added, "It's only natural you don't know, because it's a B rank."
Hearing that, she felt helpless and asked herself, "How am I supposed to get a B rank now?" Saying that, Jean lowered her head and tapped on her phone, searching. After a while, she suddenly moaned dejectedly, "Brother."
He heard her voice and asked suspiciously, "What is it?" Jean asked with a stiff face, "You want me to buy this?" 500 million.
I'd have to go without eating or clothes for 20 years to afford it. Looking at the price tag for the gray wolf, Jinna laughed and reassured her, "Calm down."
He didn't hesitate and promised, "I'll get it for you within a month."
But the only response was her doubtful laughter. "It's a whole 500 million.
Jean smiled faintly, half believing and half teasing. "Have you started learning to show off since you became a gamer?" "Never mind, I'll save the money and buy it myself later." Under the fresh sunlight, a gentle smile bloomed on Jinu's lips. Then he kindly reminded her, "Don't get so touched that you cry when you receive the gift, okay?" Saying that, Jinu walked away. "Training's done, let's go home." Leaving her looking after him suspiciously, feeling like something was strange, Jean hugged the black elf, who was in a state of exhaustion and extreme fear, and frowned in thought. "It feels like my brother has turned into a completely different person." The sky was deep blue, the sun golden and brilliant. A week later, Jia and he were standing, watching people unload the goods. Jinu asked suspiciously, "What is this?" She smiled brightly and introduced, "This is the gear you'll have to wear every time you go into the daily dungeon." Jia smiled happily and continued to summarize, "The first product of our company is information." He put on the gear and asked, "Information?" She couldn't help but brag, "We're going to sell video clips of dungeon clearances at extortionate prices." Saying that, Jia looked toward the gear and said, "And this modern equipment is indispensable for that. A small camera is attached to the pocket. When you wear it, the entire surrounding scenery will be recorded in 3D. She smiled and added, "It's very light and stretchy, so you won't feel uncomfortable." Just a few seconds later, Taeseo put on his glasses, his fingers sliding into the gloves, his movements terrifyingly calm. In the blink of an eye, a complete team appeared, and the recording was ready to go. Jinu's eyes widened as he watched, silently lamenting, "This stuff makes me feel more pressured than fighting monsters." He nodded, confused, and asked, "Since this is my first time in the second dungeon, I'm not sure if everything will be okay." "Is that all right?"
Jia smiled gently and reassured him, "It's okay, we're only going to edit the most top-tier parts." Receiving the answer, he stood still and replied, "Thank you." Before stepping through the gate, Jinu turned his head to add, "By the way, may I ask, if I break the national record the moment I enter, would that be okay?" Hearing the question, she was startled and blurted out, "Well, that would be." In her heart, she couldn't help but wonder, didn't he just say he was afraid it wouldn't go smoothly? He must be joking, right? Or is the pressure of that 1.3 billion that high? Even so, Jia still hurriedly comforted him, "Just relax, I don't mind. Just play comfortably like you did when you were a gamer." He smiled slightly and quickly agreed, "Yes, I understand." As soon as he finished speaking, Jinu decisively stepped into the teleportation gate. In his head, thoughts kept appearing. The national record for the second dungeon is 7 minutes. With the current situation, on the other side of the door, a dark space is waiting. Jinu broke into a confident smile, silently weighing things in his head. "I could probably break it as easily as playing a game." Completion time will directly determine the player's ranking, just like in most other games. Completion time will directly determine the player's ranking, just like in most other games, because without them, you can barely do anything useful. No wonder it's called a piece of trash game. This is a defense-type dungeon. Normally, you have to stand your ground against an undead army for 30 minutes. However, the clearance time is still extremely important. It's called a defense dungeon to sound impressive. In reality, everything will end as soon as the Lich boss is defeated. Therefore, rushing straight to defeat the boss has become the most popular strategy. Jinu touched the camera on his chest and commented, the equipment seems to be working quite well. Therefore, rushing straight to defeat the boss has become the most popular strategy. Jinwoo touched the camera on his chest and commented, "The equipment seems to be working quite well."
You have set up a total of 3 teams. Which team do you want to summon?
Team A, Team B, Team C. Each player can create up to 3 different lineups.
Jinwoo didn't hesitate and made his choice.
I've already divided the teams for regular dungeons, PvP, and daily dungeon runs. The next second, a series of system screens appeared.
Summoned EX rank trainer. Summoned C rank combat sheriff.
Summoned D rank mini Kong.
On his right, 2 people also appeared. Summoned C rank light priest.
Summoned D rank golden fairy. After the team appeared in full, the system screen popped up again. The Lich's undead army is flooding in.
Hold on until reinforcements arrive. A light blue notification frame appeared, displaying clear text. Time remaining, 30 minutes.
The official countdown phase officially began at 29 minutes and 59 seconds. On the other side, the Lich waved its hand, ordering the Undead Legion to charge forward. Facing the relentless assault, Mini Kong thumped its chest and roared. It grabbed a skull, the strength in its hand enough to crush it to dust in an instant.
Mini Kong used all its might to slam it hard into the ground. Looking at the skeleton lying on the ground, he exclaimed excitedly, "Come on!"
Jinwoo waved his hand confidently and ordered, "Let's go!"
Everyone.
High in the air, the Lich stood with a gloomy appearance, observing everything. In the distance, the Undead Legion was charging forward like mad. While Jinwoo was speaking, Hongyo's eyes were drawn to the hidden camera.
At first, he didn't say a word, just nodded slightly in agreement with him. "Let's just take this high ground first."
Seeing this, Jinwoo couldn't help but click his tongue and think to himself,
"This Hongyo is really sharp."
He went silent the moment he saw we were recording. At this moment, the system screen displayed that the remaining time was 27 minutes and 59 seconds. He glanced at it and pondered, calculating. It took exactly 2 minutes to get here. Jinwoo's gaze suddenly froze when he saw Gideons being pressed by monsters from all sides, while more monsters were chasing from behind.
Hongyo didn't hesitate, rushing forward, swinging his sword to destroy the monsters.
On the other side, Mini Kong was also using all its strength to rip heads off. It roared fiercely, swinging its arm back, preparing to throw a blow. Mini Kong threw the skull hard toward the incoming monsters.
Seeing that scene, he couldn't help but tremble. Mini Kong and Hongyo should be fine. It's fortunate that they are my summons. Jinwoo quickly pushed those thoughts aside and observed the Lich in the distance.
Then he stood still and ordered with a slight smile, "Sheriff, get ready." A sense of pride couldn't help but well up in his heart.
Summoning this sheriff has long range and is extremely accurate. HP -1, HP -2, but because the damage was so pathetic, no one bothered to use it before. Some players saw this and gaped in disbelief. They've been AFK for 32 hours and still couldn't finish off the target? But thinking about the next scene, Jinwoo calculated happily.
However, it is the boss of the second low-grade dungeon, because the Lich there doesn't have much HP. The next second, he suddenly raised his hand to stop him, making the sheriff suspicious.
"Wait, don't fire yet." Jinwoo turned back and gave an order, "Radiance, give us your blessing,"
only to see a flow of power suddenly coat the gun in its hand.
He nodded slightly, silently contemplating.
The effect of this buff is very simple. On the opposite side, above its head, was an information screen, Dark Shield. Jinwoo calculated confidently, it will remove the Lich's long-range attack immunity skill. Seeing that everything was under control, he lifted the corner of his mouth and spoke, "Alright, now follow the command."
The sheriff immediately raised its gun and began firing.
At the same time, Hongyo was frantically slashing through the Undead Legion. Seeing a monster about to sneak attack, Mini Kong immediately leaped forward. It slammed down hard, the terrifying force causing the monster to crumble.
In a split second, the monsters had surrounded them, sharp spears waiting to thrust.
Mini Kong froze, its movement stopping halfway. At the same time, on the other side, Radiance was still constantly praying for blessings.
The two didn't stop blessing, strengthening the sheriff. It didn't fail expectations, continuously firing bullets with an expressionless face. Hearing the sound of the bullets, Jinwoo's complexion paled helplessly.
Before that tiny amount of damage, he could only be speechless. It really is like that. No matter how you look at it, its HP -2 damage looks truly pathetic compared to the others. However, looking at that serious appearance, Jinwoo couldn't help but tell himself. But regardless, the opponent's health was still slowly decreasing. The bullets were firing, but the damage was like a casual stroll.
Shooting again and again, it finally made it annoyed. Watching the lich getting furious, he couldn't help but silently lament.
Normally, with this level and these weak runes, it would take until next year to finish. The countdown continued to drop, with 26 minutes and 15 seconds remaining, while Mini-Kong was continuously being buffed with HP plus HP plus.
Jinwoo sighed and remarked, "That's why people think it's slow and ignore it completely."
Meanwhile, its blessing points were constantly increasing.
HP plus HP plus HP plus.
Seeing that, he paused and told himself.
But still,
in an instant, a monster suddenly jumped up, startling the two of them. Taking advantage of that, the remaining ones quickly rushed to ambush Mini-Kong.
The monster shrieked, a monstrous laugh that seemed to tear through space. Its eyes locked onto Jinwoo, who was wearing an unpredictable smile.
While he was lost in thought, a figure suddenly lunged forward. That only applies to normal players. Without a sound of warning, the blade from behind sliced through the monster's head. Jinwoo glanced at Hongyo, who was coldly approaching him, and pondered, "As for me, I have Hongyo in my hands." He stood there letting him handle the monsters, his mind constantly calculating. Just need to use Hongyo's move to awaken its hidden power, then equip a set of runes with standard skills. Jinwoo's eyes suddenly glanced toward the sheriff, silently adding, "Then even a high-level lich would be finished with a single shot." In a flash, the lich suddenly stopped, and to the shock of the undead army, it suddenly fell backward.
In just a second, the system screen popped up. Dungeon cleared. Time taken, 4 minutes 12 seconds.
You have just set a new record in Korea.
You have achieved a special accomplishment.
He couldn't help but start bragging, this spoon assassin tactic is truly top tier. Outside, Tae-seop couldn't believe it and blurted out, "I never expected him to dare start his record-breaking journey in the second dungeon."
Ji mused, asking herself, is it too early to do this?
She lowered her voice and mumbled, "I only gave him the summons a week ago." "Well, even if he doesn't break the record, we still have to cheer for him."
Hearing that, Baek-jin only bowed his head and sighed, "That's true."
Then he suddenly blurted out a question, "But will Jinwoo really break all the daily dungeon records?"
Seeing that confused expression, Byung-jin quickly explained, "That's not what I meant. Breaking the record on the second day is already super, that's undisputed."
But he didn't bother explaining how he would pass the other dungeons. He looked toward the revenue board and continued, "Korea doesn't lack players with a year of experience."
"What if he's just bragging?" Ji-ah coldly interrupted, "Are you worried?" That chilly tone immediately made Byung-jin fall silent.
She didn't pay it any mind and continued with a slight smile, "Regardless, I'm using my own money to invest in this anyway." The next words immediately made the two of them stare in astonishment. "Even if what you fear happens, I guarantee both of your careers. Those who have trusted me will not be affected." In their eyes, Ji-ah was now like an angel with wings. "Of course, your salaries will still remain the same." The two of them were moved and hugged each other tightly, crying, "This is truly a dream job.
I will definitely dedicate myself fully to this place."
She shook her head, laughing helplessly, and told herself, "Because I have the capability to do that."
For a brief moment, Ji-ah's eyes became sharp.
Thinking of him, she couldn't help but silently comment, "Plus, Jinwoo, he must still be hiding a lot of his skills." The question before Jinwoo stepped into the teleportation gate suddenly appeared.
"Would it be okay if I broke the national record the moment I just arrived?"
A suspicious thought suddenly appeared in her head. It was as if these dungeons were nothing to him. Right at that moment, a shout of astonishment suddenly rang out, "The record has just been broken,"
followed by panicked cries, "What record?" The second dungeon for beginners only took 4 minutes and 12 seconds. In front of the screen, everyone couldn't help but wonder, he shortened it by a full 3 minutes compared to the old record? Which monster did this?
It was seeing that familiar face, the person gasped in shock, "It's Jinwoo, who else?"
Tae-seop also couldn't help but blurt out, "This is truly crazy."
On the screen at this moment was the leaderboard.
1. Jinwoo. 2. Kong Ji-ho.
Byung-jin stared, gasping in astonishment beyond imagination. The two of them began chattering excitedly, unable to believe this had happened.
"He's truly excellent."
Meanwhile, Ji-ah stood behind, lost in thought, asking herself, he jumped in for the first time and broke the record right away. A wave of excitement made her hands tremble. She already had the answer in her heart. So the plan had truly succeeded. The battle ended, the sun quietly peeked over the horizon, and the teleportation gate appeared. Jinwoo stood there with his hands on his hips, his eyes full of confidence. He turned off the camera, telling himself he still had things to handle before logging out. Looking at the virtual screen in front of him, Jinwoo smiled and calculated. From this moment on, it will be a journey of non-stop grinding. At this moment, on the screen, an option appeared.
Do you want to auto-battle with this lineup?
In BOS, just passing the daily dungeon is enough to AFK automatically, which means as long as my summons keep repeating that task, the rewards will automatically fill my pockets. Thinking this, he didn't hesitate and chose to agree.
The next second, Hongyo vanished before his eyes, replaced by Ramba, the EX rank Wind Fairy summon.
Jinwoo laughed lightly and ordered, Ramba, the task of grinding the second dungeon is entrusted to you. Jinwoo laughed lightly and ordered, Ramba, the task of grinding the second dungeon is entrusted to you. Old memories suddenly rushed back into his mind, like a slow-motion film reel.
She knelt to the ground, moaning desperately, I'd rather go grinding. Please, master, let me go grinding.
All right. After assigning tasks, he immediately calculated the next step. Very good, now just go ahead and clear all the remaining dungeons. I will live here forever.
Then I will harvest the spoils from the AFK farming.
After assigning tasks, he immediately calculated the next step. Very good, now just go ahead and clear all the remaining dungeons. I will live here forever.
Then I will harvest the spoils from the AFK farming.
Before stepping through the teleportation gate, he didn't forget to remind, I'm counting on you, Ramba.
Ramba lay on top of Mini Kong, excitedly promising, understood. Leave it to me.
On the other side, the teleportation gate also opened. In the glow from the teleportation gate, Jinwoo gradually stepped out. Just as he stepped out, he froze in suspicion. Striking his eyes was the scene of Tae Sip respectfully laying out a carpet, welcome back. Accompanied by the worshipful faces of Ji-ah and Baek Jinwoo, I always believed in you. Jinwoo was a bit confused and passed the equipment over, oh yes. All the recorded videos are in here. He hesitated and asked, do you need me to help with anything else? She smiled gently and quickly nodded, of course. On the other side, he received the equipment and excitedly blurted out, thank you very much. Ji-ah professionally gave an assurance, we will keep it absolutely confidential, don't worry about the news leaking out. But the response was Jinwoo's indifferent attitude, I don't really care about the new record being leaked. This made her suspiciously ask, what did you say? He coldly made a request, instead, just protect my family well, that's enough. In his heart, he couldn't help but worry. The gangs are still running rampant all over Korea, but because Ji-ah is in control of the rights, they will probably tighten security. Ji-ah was silent, lowering her eyes as if calculating something. In the end, she nodded slightly in agreement.
Fine, I will protect them.
Even if I have to use the full force of Daesun. Meanwhile, in a dark room, Komodo opened its mouth wide, ready to swallow its prey. When it was eating happily, a dungeon completion notification appeared above Jinwoo's head.
Time, 3 minutes 10 seconds.
He smiled smugly.
Because I was recording, I used Komodo to clear the stage. But with this lineup, I could even set a world record, couldn't I?
Looking at Komodo lying satisfied over there, Jinwoo silently calculated. Just need to install extra movement speed runes for this Komodo and maximize the Wind Fairy's speed buff. Breaking the record is simple. If I use Hongyo to awaken its potential, it might only take 1 minute. Thinking this, he immediately pressed the stop recording button. After settling everything, Jinwoo immediately turned and stepped into the teleportation gate.
That's the end of the recording for the 3rd day. 4th dungeon. The 4th dungeon is where you earn defense runes. It has a very unique characteristic, and that is,
he shivered, hugging his body tightly, screaming silently, it's so cold here it makes me shiver, causing my movement speed to decrease miserably.
Jinwoo complained as he reached out to choose, it's freezing to death.
At the same time, 2 animals appeared, the system screen popped up.
Summoned C-rank Ice Cat. Summoned B-rank Wind Eagle. The next second was a series of other notification lines. Summoned B-rank Titan Golem.
Summoned C-rank Horned Fairy.
Summoned EX rank Dragon Mage.
The Ice Cat just appeared and quickly dispelled the cold.
He couldn't help but sigh in relief.
In this place, you must have a summon possessing cold resistance skills, and among them, the Ice Cat is the #1 choice.
Jinwoo looked into the distance, let's see.
On the other side is a squad of monsters charging forward like mad. He wasn't afraid but calmly spoke up, Titan Golem.
Upon receiving the order, the Titan Golem excitedly waved its hands, amplify the Golem's protective armor.
And without stopping, Jinnu immediately turned and called the Wind Eagle, silently calculating in his heart. Use the Wind Eagle's speed buff for us to glide forward quickly. The Wind Eagle gently flew over and landed on its shoulder. The Titan Golem at this time also reached out for the three of them to step on.
Waiting until the group was sitting firmly, it accelerated and bolted away.
The strong wind whipped into his face, making him pale. Jinnu quickly covered his mouth in agony. The vigilance is real.
But I'm so dizzy. Whoever persists to the end wins. Meanwhile, those monsters launched their attacks first, a series of rapid ice balls. The Titan Golem flexibly dodged them.
He smiled smugly and thought.
It's true that the Titan Golem makes an unbeatable punching bag.
Even so, another thought suddenly popped up.
But that still wasn't all.
It stared for a moment then leaped up.
Watching the Titan Golem easily cling to the high cliff, he couldn't help but be impressed.
Thanks to taking the shortcuts that only a golem could take, I saved a lot of time. However, Jinnu suddenly turned and signaled, Pokrion, get ready to fight.
Pokrion didn't answer, just looked up.
The hand it was using to cling to the cliff suddenly tightened.
The Titan Golem lunged and launched into the air. Following that was a glaring red warning screen. Boss. Warning. Warning.
The boss has appeared.
The monster, the moment it saw them, roared viciously.
Seeing the tense situation, he hurriedly called the Horned Fairy. The Horned Fairy quickly flew to the top and cast magic. Jinnu watched and ordered, Pokrion, attack now.
Instantly, blazing fire was summoned.
The fire dragon lunged, closing in on the boss in a blink. As the roar ended, the monster was submerged in a sea of fire. The system screen quickly popped up.
Boss defeated. Dungeon cleared successfully. Time, 4 minutes 22 seconds.
He couldn't help but shout in joy, wonderful. After the battle, the group stood to rest temporarily.
Jinnu hummed happily, another new record set.
He suddenly froze, his face pale at the horrified gaze of the whole group. Jinnu collapsed and screamed, motion sickness.
No, not that, the golem is gone.
And on the newspaper, the headline was clear, new nation record set.
Low-grade web dungeon new record of 4 minutes 22 seconds. Who is Jinnu?
From that moment on, everyone showed skepticism when reading the article.
Jinnu?
Batgirl asked with some doubt, isn't this person the one who cleared the third dungeon before?
Now the press only mentioned one single question. 20 News, who is Jinnu? In the coffee shop, whispers kept ringing out, who is Jinnu anyway? Don't you really remember?
It's the guy who claimed he would break Kong Jianho's record on the forum.
Remembered now. In another place, similar questions were taking place, so he just set another new record? That's right, even surpassing Kong Jianho?
His eyes scanned the screen, he blurted out a skeptical sentence, he doesn't look like a high-ranking player at all. Articles were published continuously. Daily dungeon record broken by Jinnu, a newly famous player. The wall of the third dungeon record officially crumbled before the name Jinnu. It's Jinnu again, breaking the clearance time of the fourth dungeon.
Whispers followed, unbelievable, this has never happened before. All attention was now focused on the name Jinnu.
The director had a bit of a headache and muttered, if it's truly Jinnu. The secretary on the side quickly continued, sir, it's the person that appraiser Park Chang-suk mentioned before. He said he would provide news if we gave him summons.
He raised an eyebrow and asked, is it the person that appraiser Im Hee-soo strongly opposed? The secretary immediately confirmed, yes, it's him.
Back then we refused to spend money if there was no prior information. The director leaned back wearily, but it seems what he said was all true. He affirmed firmly, it must be so.
He didn't answer but sighed pensively.
Remembering that scene back then, the director immediately regretted and told himself, thinking back, at that time Im Hee-soo's words also sounded reasonable. Remembering that scene back then, the director immediately regretted and told himself, thinking back, at that time Im Hee-soo's words also sounded reasonable. But the more he thought, the more the director felt regret. If only he had been willing to support Jinnu back then, not only would he be praised by the people, but he would also have collected a ton of votes. He shook his head, lamenting, old Im Hee-soo is truly senile, his judgment is too poor. Unbelievably, he threw away the luck right in front of his eyes with his own hands. However, the director still spoke, first of all, where is the secretary?
he replied while handling work. I'm here, sir. He quickly made a decision, find a way to contact Jinu once more. The secretary, upon hearing, was confused and reconfirmed, Sir, are we taking the initiative to contact him directly? In the director's eyes, determination was clear, correct. Initially, I thought it was a scam, but it turned out to be the real deal. Must at all costs pull him to our side. In the director's eyes, determination was clear, correct. Initially, I thought it was a scam, but it turned out to be the real deal. Must at all costs pull him to our side. And going to the third dungeon will earn strengthening potions. He strode confidently through the teleportation gate. The desolate desert scenery unfolded right before his eyes. The fifth dungeon gives skill books. These books don't help you learn the special moves of the summons, even less so the hidden skills that only trainers can unlock, but it still drops a lot of pretty decent moves, so it's worth grinding. Thanks to that, I can skip it, no need to do the Sunday dungeon anymore. At the Sunday dungeon, a thank you note was provided. You've worked hard, it's best we never meet again. Jinu and Ramba, exhausted, shouted in unison, Great, it's time to go home. Both the Sunday and Thursday dungeons drop skill books equally, but going to the fifth one gets you more. Thinking this, he smugly calculated, that warm-up is enough. Should I go practice a bit more? Since there's no need to grind these places constantly, I decided to let the whole team rest on Sunday. So what is that super easy fifth dungeon actually? Amidst the desolate rocky landscape, the system signaled, Warning. 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 The red screen illuminated. Boss monster is appearing. Looking at the monster before him, he couldn't help but think to himself, that is where you have to jump into a deathmatch with the boss immediately. Jinu complained, bored, the boss here has an unreasonably high defense stat. The basic strategy often seen is using the B-rank White Wolf to trigger the defense reduction skill. However, he didn't follow the path but quickly summoned everyone. Giant hands slammed into the ground, followed by a heavy stomp. Looking at the majestic Titan Golem, Jinu's inner confidence immediately increased. If you are strong enough to crush it with damage, then it's perfectly fine. He raised his hand to turn off the recorder. This video probably can't be sold. Jinu couldn't help but sigh, just bringing out a team of monsters and beating it to a pulp like this, what can people learn? Today's menu, stir-fried earth golem. He introduced happily, first, guys, take out your level summons. Just do it leisurely like taking caviar out of the fridge to use. Everyone has a frog in their pocket, right? The audience heard this and expressed dissatisfaction. Just close the shop then. Jinu couldn't help but sigh, just bringing out a team of monsters and beating it to a pulp like this, what can people learn? Today's menu, stir-fried earth golem. He introduced happily, first, guys, take out your level summons. Just do it leisurely like taking caviar out of the fridge to use. Everyone has a frog in their pocket, right? The audience heard this and expressed dissatisfaction, just close the shop then. Finally, he concluded, regardless, it's not like there's no trick to break the record. Thinking this, Jinu climbed onto its hand and said, Titan Golem. Finally, he concluded, regardless, it's not like there's no trick to break the record. Thinking this, Jinu climbed onto its hand and said, Titan Golem. Jinu's train of thought was interrupted as the two golems clashed, which was exactly why he had to summon the Titan Golem. Jinu's train of thought was interrupted as the two golems clashed, which was exactly why he had to summon the Titan Golem. Pokryong. Hoongyo. Jinu commanded directly. Focus all your fire on its head. In the blink of an eye, the two golems lunged at each other, but a second later, its arm was suddenly sliced clean off. Before anyone noticed, Hoongyo had already landed on the earth golem's arm. He calmly sheathed his sword while the golem stared at him in stunned silence. Before the earth golem could even react, it was shredded into pieces. High in the air, Pokryong raised her staff to summon sacred flames. She prepared to deliver the finishing blow with a cold, focused expression. A torrent of fire transformed into a dragon and plummeted down, immediately swallowing the earth golem whole. In the end, only its scorched remains were left behind. With the battle over, Pokryong landed on the Titan Golem's shoulder. A series of notifications followed, boss monster defeated. Dungeon clear successful. Dungeon clear successful. Jinu clenched his fist in excitement and shouted, I cut a whole minute off the national record. He then looked down at Hoongyo and remarked, Hongyo is so strong he's practically breaking the game's balance. Even so, Jinwoo mentally crossed his name off the list, thinking, still, I don't plan on taking him or the main squad to this 5th dungeon. He scanned the area in thought, realizing that Pokrion alone, with her proper training, was enough. Seeing Pokrion looking at him with sparkling eyes, Jinwoo thought proudly, she's got what it takes to clear the highest level dungeon in a heartbeat. Seeing Pokrion looking at him with sparkling eyes, Jinwoo thought proudly, she's got what it takes to clear the highest level dungeon in a heartbeat. Hongyo nodded slightly at the sound, while Rambo waved happily. Amidst the rocky ruins, his voice rang out with relief. Alright, let's go for another round. A moment later, Jinwoo stepped through the teleportation gate once again. Just then, a man walked up and asked, excuse me, are you the player Jinwoo? Looking at the two strangers, he answered cautiously, that's me. One of them respectfully held out a business card and introduced themselves. We're from the secretariat under the director's office. As soon as Jinwoo saw the card, he spoke up, I see. He didn't want to get tangled up in this, so he asked, is there something you need from me? He couldn't help but wonder why they were here. He thought the discussions with headquarters had ended long ago. The secretary hurried to explain, we've carefully reviewed the proposal you submitted previously, Mr. Jinwoo. The man continued in a monotonous tone, you've achieved impressive results, and we're interested in a collaboration. Jinwoo cut him off immediately, that business? He waved his hand with a dismissive smile, let's just forget about it. The two men stared at him in utter shock, excuse me? Seeing their reaction, Jinwoo let out a mocking laugh. Reviewing his results, my foot. The image of Jia with her angelic wings appeared in his mind, I'll pay you 13 billion upfront. Trust me. Behind her, the director's voice echoed, let me reconsider. Just trust headquarters. The more he thought about it, the angrier Jinwoo got. What did they take him for? Did they think he was someone they could just push around? Their words sounded nice, but they were the complete opposite of Jia. With that thought, he spoke up, startling the secretary. Jinwoo explained calmly, I already have an agency. If you want to talk business, contact Jia at UBEC directly. He walked away decisively, that's it. Goodbye. He left the secretary wide-eyed. UBEC? He asked suspiciously, what the hell is UBEC? The secretary expressed his confusion, he just mentioned it, don't tell me he's with the Daesung group. He frowned and ordered, we need to investigate this immediately. He couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of unease, as if they had just let a golden opportunity slip through their fingers. On a chat screen, the bureau chief asked anxiously, are you awake? You must be sleeping soundly. I don't know why, but I just miss you so much. I wish I'd met you sooner. I think I've fallen for you, Jinwoo. He coldly replied with a like emoji and a notification, Jinwoo has left the chat. The next day, in the heart of the city, Jinwoo stood on a rooftop, soaking in the sun. He turned around suddenly and muttered, this should be good enough for now. The next day, in the heart of the city, Jinwoo stood on a rooftop, soaking in the sun, unlike other dungeons where you just let your summons do the fighting. Master, you're such a newbie. Wait for me. Here, the player has to overcome the challenge themselves for it to count as a clear. Jinwoo didn't hesitate and made his decision, time to start training immediately. He quickly clicked to summon his beast, and in a flash, the surrounding space shifted as the system screen appeared, summoning B-rank Skydragon. Jinwoo walked slowly to the railing and looked down. Seeing the height, he couldn't help but think, thanks to the protection shield, I don't have to worry about falling to my death. But it's still pretty nerve-wracking. Then, Jinwoo spoke up, Sky. Sky quickly lowered itself. Jinwoo climbed on and asked, let's go. Are you ready? At Jinwoo's command, it took off rapidly, straight to the East Sea. The sudden loss of gravity made him panic and shut his eyes tightly. But very quickly, Jinwoo opened his eyes again. Looking down at the miniature city below, he gasped in surprise. This is much more fun than I thought. Thinking that, he happily ordered, awesome. Let's go. A while later, by the coastal waters, Hongyo saw him and exclaimed, my master. He shouted with pride, your flying skills are top-notch. You really didn't disappoint me. Jinwoo felt a bit flustered, thinking, the flattery is putting the pressure on me, but he brushed it off, it's not that impressive. Hongyo shook his head vehemently, no, I'm being serious. Then Pokryong chimed in, he's right, it's true. She reminisced with admiration, it took us ages to learn how to ride a dragon back in the day. The image of those two struggling brought back memories of the Summoner's War, when Hongyo and Pokryong had to learn to ride dragons and dolphins. He was speechless. Pokryong didn't hesitate to shower him with praise, you really are Saint Jinwoo. You totally deserve to be our master. You're amazing.
Jinwoo felt his heart melt at the sight, they were too cute.
Alright, thank you guys, Hongyo muttered sadly to the side, why didn't you praise me too? Such discrimination. He quickly looked away, let's just move on. Watching the vast ocean, Jinwoo asked, so, next up is learning to ride the sky dolphin, right? She quickly answered, that's right. He showed a humble side, learning from experienced pros like you guys is the fastest way to improve. I'm counting on you. Pokryong added enthusiastically, I'll do my best.
He also clenched his fist, at your command, master. A few days later, at the 6th dungeon, Jinwoo had teleported to the 6th dungeon, a confident smile blooming on his lips. This was the place that specialized in unique runes. As he started, Jinwoo called out, Wind Eagle. The virtual screen displayed the text, the running challenge will begin in 10 seconds. Reach the finish line as fast as possible. This was the place that earned him the God of Speed title. The Wind Eagle appeared and heard his command, buff me with a speed boost. Jinwoo lowered his center of gravity to prepare for the sprint. At the same time, the countdown appeared, 3, 2, 1. As the countdown hit 1, a flash of light gleamed in Jinwoo's eyes. The moment the signal was given, he bolted forward. Gun turrets emerged in the air, pointing down at him. He zigzagged, nimbly dodging the barrage of fire as he raced ahead. In a split second, a bullet grazed Jinwoo's arm. He jumped agilely, landing on the yellow tiles. Being able to experience this myself is so satisfying. It's way more fun than just watching it on a computer screen. Excitement flickered in Jinwoo's eyes, time to enter the first hidden path. Before him lay the blinding light of the horizon over the vast ocean. Jinwoo smirked and calculated. Usually, you'd have to cross the water and just run straight. But no sooner had he thought that, he suddenly leaped into midair. Jinwoo dove headfirst into the sea. He laughed brightly and shouted the summon command, Sky Dolphin, come on out. A dolphin leaped out from under the waves. Summon C-rank Sky Dolphin. Jinwoo hugged it, quickly closing his eyes and holding his breath. A second later, both vanished into the deep sea. Gazing at the dazzling underwater scenery, he couldn't help but think, if I use the dolphin to move underwater, I can avoid a bunch of obstacles up top. Jinwoo squinted his eyes as they prepared to surface. As he burst out of the water, he immediately shouted, Sky Dragon. Seeing that familiar silhouette, Jinwoo climbed down quickly. From this point on, he pushed off the dolphin's body with all his strength and landed easily on Sky's back. Time for an aerial performance. They nimbly dodged every attack. He just had to fly past the remaining traps, and he'd be done. In a blink, the finish line appeared. He opened his eyes wide in excitement and shouted, Finish! Following Jinwoo's joyful cry, the system screen popped up immediately. You have reached the finish line. The system cheered in celebration. Dungeon clear. Time, 2 minutes 16 seconds. Then came a fireworks display across the screen. Congratulations, you have broken South Korea's national record. You have achieved a special title. The forest blazed with fire under a crimson sky. The scene shifted to the 7th dungeon after the 6th had been cleared. A giant monster roared amidst the intense flames, while burning creatures scattered. A hawk dived straight down. Flames swallowed the forest as all monsters were wiped out. The dungeon was cleared in just 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Footage showed towering cliffs under the sunset as the Sunday dungeon was also cleared in record time. Jinwoo stood with his arms outstretched, his summons unleashed their power on the enemy. A beam of light struck the target. A white-haired figure with glowing eyes was bleeding on his face, his head jerking back from the impact. Hongyo stood holding a glowing blue sword, with the others standing behind him. The ultimate leader was defeated, and the dungeon was cleared. Hongyo closed his eyes calmly, with Ramba sitting on his head. He said, that fight was actually tough. Meanwhile, she said, this is the result of our training. Jinwoo helped Pokryong stand up. She added, everyone did great. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, sighed, and broke the South Korean national record by clearing all low-level dungeons. The clear time of 14 minutes 50 seconds was displayed as he said, now, if I keep grinding them, the clear times will only get shorter. Let's focus on leveling up until we can challenge the mid-level dungeons. He looked up at the massive tower soaring into the sky and said, I need to clear up to the highest level dungeons and collect a certain amount of runes and skills. Only then will I have enough stats to challenge the trial tower. He glanced to the side with a faint smile as the others stood nearby, then asked, are 2 years enough? Hongyo grabbed Ramba by the hand. Jinwoo looked at the system board and said, but wait, an interface filled with items appeared. He continued, high-level summon scrolls are one thing, but what should I do with these clear rewards? The scene shifted to Yubek's office, where Jia sat at her desk, holding her phone. The phone screen displayed news of Jin Woo breaking records in daily dungeons. The report asked who he was and declared that the whole world was going crazy over Baek Jin-woo. She leaned back in her chair with a calm smile and said, she remarked that this was to be expected since he had broken every dungeon record in just 1 week. She turned her head toward Byong-jin and called him. He was sitting at his desk and replied, "Yes, ma'am." She asked about the progress of the video editing. Byong-jin scratched his head nervously and said he had just finished. Byong-jin looked up from behind his computer screen and asked if there was a problem. Tcop looked up from behind his computer screen and asked if there was a problem. Jia sat at her desk, holding a device, and said, "Not a problem, but it's hard to believe even while watching it." "Do you guys want to see?" She looked at the screen playing the underwater footage and said she didn't include the Thursday and Sunday dungeons in the video at Baek Jin-woo's request. She and the two men watched the screen with serious expressions. One reacted in shock. Close-up footage showed a hand gripping a dolphin underwater, while a voice exclaimed, "What the hell is that?" A blinding light spread across the sea surface, and the water rippled outward under the glare. A giant wyvern flew up with Jin Woo sitting on its back. The voice continued, "This is nonsense." Jia sat stunned while Bong-jin said, "His strategy and execution are on an entirely different level, it's practically circus-like." She asked, "Is this real?" Byong-jin, with a strange expression, said, "Even a movie couldn't film a scene like this." He added that even if they sold it, people would be insulted because no one could replicate it. Jia looked straight ahead with calm eyes as a voice said, "That just proves how talented Baek Jin-woo is." She gripped the chair's armrest and said, "Before we sell these videos." Byong-jin stood behind her. She continued, "Buy all the summon creatures that appear in them." He said she was thinking of cornering the market first. Jia turned slightly with a confident smile and said, "Exactly, because we need to maximize our profit based on this information." Byong-jin leaned forward, typing on his tablet with a surprised expression, and said, "So with our current budget, we'll try to..." Jia interrupted, "No, don't worry about the budget. Just buy them all." Jia turned back with a confident smile and signaled, "If we're short, I'll borrow it in my name." Her hands typed on the keyboard extremely fast. She sat at her desk with a calm smile while continuing to type. In a stylized scene, a character with a $sign stood at the desk opposite Jia, while a voice shouted, "You Jia. Call the branch manager here." In the same stylized scene, two characters in suits knelt next to a pile of money and said, "We've approved it to the maximum limit, I can even give you my watch." The other said, "Just tell us whatever you need," while she smiled with her eyes closed and said, "I've borrowed the money and bought all the summon creatures." She typed on the keyboard and declared, "Now is the time to sell the information." The prices and terms for the dungeon strategy information were displayed. A screen full of strategy info for all daily dungeons was being sold, including Baek Jin-woo's. Byong-jin leaned toward the screen and asked, "Is it okay to sell it for so cheap?" Jia sat calmly and replied that the strategy info was just bait to sell the summon creatures. She turned her head slightly with a faint smile and said, "This is also for the development of South Korea, so selling it a bit cheap is fine." Top turned toward them from his desk and asked what price they should list the stockpiled summon creatures at. She smiled confidently and said, "Make C rank 200 million and B rank 1 billion. TCOP turned back with a shocked expression and said, "That's 10 times the current market price, isn't that too expensive?" Many glowing summon creatures floated in the dark space. A voice said, "As this information spreads, these summon creatures will eventually be something everyone needs, so the price will naturally rise." More summon creatures appeared as the voice continued, "Since they hold most of the supply, people will have no choice but to buy." The cursor clicked the post button. The voice said, "Now then," and it was time to harvest the fruits of believing and investing in Baek Jin-woo. The sky brightened with a building appearing. A voice called, "Ma'am." Two men leaned forward with stunned expressions looking at the screen and said, "This isn't a dream, is it?" While Jia sat below smiling, the screen displayed sales revenue reaching 377 billion. A burst of light exploded from the screen, making the two men cover their faces. A voice said, "We haven't even started yet." "What the hell is this?" Jia's hands trembled on the keyboard while the two men behind her cheered. The voice continued, "The summon creatures bought for Baek Jin will only cost 1.3 billion, but look at it now." Jia sat with her eyes closed, taking a deep breath to calm her excitement, while the two men slumped against the wall behind her. She sat at her desk facing the screen and said, "The business viability has been proven." The two men looked at her with shocked expressions while she added, "Now we start large-scale investing."
One replied, huh? She turned her head with a confident smile and said, first, shall we go buy a building? She looked back at the two men kneeling on the floor and asked, why are they so pathetic? They remained sitting and replied, because of Baek Jin-woo and the glasses. Jin-woo sat alone on a park bench, holding his phone. The phone screen displayed Baek Jin-woo's account balance, over 54 million. He smiled at the phone with sparkles surrounding him, while Ramba clung to his shoulder with a shocked look. He said, in just 1 week of selling high-level summon scrolls, I earned 54 million. She asked, how many cakes is that? He leaned back on the bench with a happy smile and said, dungeon rewards are so sweet. While Ramba pointed at herself and asked, did any EX rank ones come out of that pile? Jin-woo looked straight ahead with a serious expression and said, Ramba, did you forget? He lay face down on the ground, surrounded by piles of summon creatures and debris, while groaning. Many memories flashed by of him and Ramba tearing up summon scrolls. He leaned against the bench and said they had torn up tens of thousands of scrolls and still got nothing. Jin-woo sat holding his phone while Ramba cried out, just thinking about it is painful as hell. He added, besides, instead of opening new summon scrolls, it's time to focus on upgrading the ones I already have. He looked down at his phone and said, by the way, I should sell all the junk I got from grinding. Should I ask Jia? He raised his phone. The screen displayed Baek Ah-jin's contact info. Ah-jin stood in the crowd while he considered and thought, come to think of it, Ah-jin sells runes. From now on, there will be a constant stream of stuff worth selling. I might as well hand it all over to Ah-jin. His fingers tapped rapidly on his phone keyboard. Ah-jin gave money to her mother under a streetlight while thinking he could share the profits with her. Plus, she had helped pay for part of his medical bills. She smiled brightly while holding the stack of cash in her hand. He typed on his phone and sent, hey Ah-jin, can we meet for a bit? He looked at his phone and sent another, if you can, come to the vacant lot. He smiled lightly, thinking now was the perfect time to repay her. The scene shifted to a cafe, where a girl stood near the entrance. A blonde girl covered her mouth and laughed, asking if her new boyfriend was a player, while the other girl replied and asked about his summon creatures, wondering if he had a B-rank one. A girl raised her glass to drink and said she didn't know, but he told her he would soon. Another voice chimed in, maybe he'll give her a summon creature or rune later, and said they were jealous. Ah-jin lowered her eyes, closed them, and sighed softly. She raised her hand slightly while speaking with an awkward smile. The girl beside her looked at her and asked what was wrong, saying she didn't look so good. Ah-jin replied she was just distracted. Ah-jin looked at her friend with a small smile. A voice told her to share her troubles, saying it might feel better to get it out. She closed her eyes, her face slightly flushed, and said, guys, I'm really touched, but my brother is actually the player everyone's been talking about lately. Jin-woo stood with his back to a high-rise building, money fluttering around him while he said to keep this a secret for now. Ah-jin stared in shock and muttered, what? She gripped the edge of the table with a tense expression, sweat beading on her forehead. Her friend smiled while Ah-jin thought about how she was supposed to tell them that he even started a company to sell information. She grabbed her hair with both hands and shook her head in frustration while thinking he must have his reasons. Even so, Ah-jin stood awkwardly between them. They looked at her worriedly and asked what her brother had been doing lately, wondering if he was busy. She stammered that she didn't know anything. She tugged at her hair with an angry expression, flames rising behind her while thinking it was so annoying to hide it from her parents. But she couldn't just blurt it out either. Ah-jin imagined herself screaming and flailing wildly while she sat at the table, looking down at her phone with a confused expression. She looked at the screen showing a text message for a meeting at the vacant lot. She stared at the phone with wide eyes while thinking she had no idea what else he was going to say. She stood up from her chair and said she had to go. Her friends looked at her in surprise. Ah-jin turned toward them, clasping her hands. Her friend said, we were planning to have dinner together. She apologized and said, my brother called. The girl leaned forward with a surprised expression and asked if her brother had just woken up from his coma, and if he was doing okay now. Ah-jin raised her hand while walking out and said she'd explain in detail later, and that she'd pay for the next time they hung out. An open outdoor area with cliffs under the daylight. Ah-jin stood holding her bag, looking forward and asking what was going on. A wildcat fired a burst of energy toward the red monsters, flames erupting between them. Two figures ran at high speed forward with a wyvern flying above. Many fairies fluttered around the golem while it tried to catch them. Hongyo stood calmly, holding a whistle and observing. Ah-jin realized he was the very person who had overwhelmed her shadow elf last time. He turned his head toward Ah-jin while she stood frozen in place. Ah-jin stared at him with a blank expression as he turned away, ignoring her. She asked, he's here? She turned her head with a look of surprise and called out to her brother, asking what all this was. He stood shirtless, a towel draped over his shoulders, wiping his head. A rear angle revealed his muscular build. Jin stared with a bewildered expression and asked what this was, wondering if his body had always been like this. A vision of her frail, sickly brother holding a phone with trembling hands appeared in her mind. You were just lying in a hospital bed on N4 drip, unable to lift anything heavier than a phone. Jin-woo gripped the towel around his neck, looked back at her, and asked, "Are you okay?" Jin leaned forward in shock, pointing at the summons behind him and shouting, "Brother, what are those summons?" He asked, "What's wrong?" She told him their market value had been skyrocketing lately. The summons and their values were displayed: C-rank Combat Sheriff and Priest of Radiance at 200 million, B-rank Skywyvern, Wind Falcon, and Titanium Golem at 1 billion. She said they were hard to get because there was no supply. Jin squinted with a tense expression and thought, wait, why does he have such rare ones? Jin-woo stood in front of a high-rise building while she thought about rumors claiming these summons appeared in videos sold by Ubek. He turned his head slightly with a faint smirk. She said, Ubek. Jin's eyes widened sharply, and she reacted in astonishment. Looking at him in shock, she said, "No way." Jin-woo stood with his arms crossed, watching her. She asked, "Brother, did you break the daily dungeon records using these summons?" He replied, "Yeah." She asked, "Where did you get them?" He answered, "Do you remember Jia from back then?" Jin clasped her hands excitedly and replied, "Jia, of course I remember." Meanwhile, Jia appeared behind her, covering her mouth to hide a laugh and asking, "You're Jin-woo's little sister, aren't you? You're so cute." She still had her hands clasped, staring straight ahead with a blank expression as he said, "She gave them to me." Jin's face broke into a sweat, and she shouted, "She gave you such expensive things." While Jin-woo stood in the distance, she asked, "Don't they belong to the company?" He replied, "No." She stood stiffly with a dazed expression while Jin-woo faced her and said, "You got here pretty fast, though." Jin raised a fist near her mouth, looked at him with a surprised expression, and asked, "Right, why did you call me here?" He asked, "Are you still selling runes these days?" A hand fanned out over a glowing blue interface full of rune icons. She replied, "Yeah, I sold a few yesterday," and asked, "Why do you ask?" He answered, "Well, it's like this." Jin-woo waved his hand forward over the glowing interface, and items spilled onto the ground while Jin stared in shock. A large pile of dungeon rewards appeared between them. Both looked at it. She shouted, "What is this?" He replied that it was the reward he got from clearing dungeons and asked if she wanted to see. Jin picked up a rune and held it to her face, saying this was a swiftness rune, right? But the stats were a bit. Her chibi version appeared to react, "Oh, this cleave rune has a rare critical hit rate roll. This will sell for a high price." Jin-woo stood with his arms crossed, smiling. She squinted, holding a blue rune, and said, "This one is crit rate on defensive stats, so that's a bit weird," while thinking, the stats aren't bad, though. Jin-woo thought it was because Jin sold runes every day. Jin stood opposite a large holographic market board full of charts and labels. He added that she had a keen eye, even remembering all the low drop rate rune effects, and could quickly judge the value of skill books and materials. She sat on the ground, waving a hand tiredly next to a summon under a sign that read, "Sleep less to save the family." He said she even recognized his summons immediately, surely she lived in the market. She held a book with both hands and looked up in surprise when he called her name. Jin-woo faced her with a light smile while she clutched the book to her chest. He said, "I'll leave it all to you. Want to try selling them?" She replied, "You want me to sell them?" She looked to the side with a blank expression while thinking, "I'm confident I can sell them well." Jin smiled and closed her eyes, standing in front of a shop, thinking she was at least not inferior to anyone. And she had repeatedly shown a knack for business. A younger version of her handed a phone to Jin-woo as he turned away. The thoughts continued. Ever since she was little, no matter the game, she always found trading more fun than hunting monsters. Books and colorful stones lay scattered on the ground as she thought, but if I sell these, farming runes won't be necessary anymore. Jin leaned forward with a determined expression and said, "Wait, but wouldn't it be better to just focus on selling?" She added, "The thing I'm most worried about is..." Jin-woo watched her with a neutral expression. Jin looked at him with a hint of anxiety and asked, "So, what's my commission?" She lowered her eyes with a serious expression, thinking, I have to think about my own future, too. Doing it for free once or twice was fine, but she couldn't do it every time. Jin-woo crossed his arms and asked with a calm smile, "How much do you want?" Jin stood with her eyes closed and said,
Usually, large wholesalers take about 8 to 10%. But since it's you, she raised her hand with her fingers spread out. She gestured with 5 fingers and said, I'll only take 5%, is that okay? Jinwoo closed his eyes with a small smile and said, what's with the 5%? He added, we're family, after all. Jin bowed her head, a drop of sweat sliding down her cheek. She reacted in silence. A hand went up with 2 fingers held out. Then she stood looking forward with a confused expression. Jinwoo stood with a radiant smile, held up 2 fingers, and said, I'll be generous and give you 20%, try your best to sell them well. Jin stood frozen, her eyes wide and mouth agape, stuttering, 20%. Jinwoo stood behind her, smiling with his eyes closed, and repeated, between us, Jin. She reached forward in astonishment and shouted, you're giving me that much. He turned his back, waved a hand as he walked away, and said, I'll give you more good runes later, get ready to be busy. Jin stood behind him, sweating, and reacted, later? Meaning it wasn't just a one-time thing, but long-term. Jin leaned forward, blushing and shocked, while thinking, selling all that stuff with a 20% commission. She clenched her hands in front of her chest. She stood still, looking down at his retreating back, and said, now I don't need to farm runes anymore. Jinwoo walked away with a faint smile while she wiped her eyes with her sleeves behind him. Jin smiled brightly, tears welling up, and said, I'm going to become a professional merchant. A fierce flame swirled with Pokryong at the center while Jinwoo stood inside a protective shield. After handing all the dungeon rewards to Jin, he focused on upgrading Pokryong's level. A staff with a glowing core was held forward as energy gathered around it. A giant dragon-shaped wave of fire rushed across the battlefield while she cast explosive dragon wave. Jinwoo stood calmly inside the shield with a faint smile. Pokryong gripped her staff tightly with a focused expression, as the narration stated that the essential requirement to become a strong player was to have a powerful damage dealer. She stepped forward holding the staff. Jinwoo said, well done, Pokryong. He reached out to pat her head. She startled slightly. He continued, you can clear D-rank dungeons with your eyes closed now. That's amazing. She smiled lightly with flushed cheeks and said, thank you. Jinwoo rubbed his chin and thought it had been quite a while since he started running dungeons with just Pokryong. Ramba reached forward in a panic with tears as he said, Hongyo must be training the others. He waved as he walked. Ramba was pressed under a large pot while other summons stood nearby. The narration said that summons could wander for hours without a player and could even desummon themselves. They walked side by side through a dimly lit cave while he said, come to think of it, Pokryong. She replied, yes, Lord Jinwoo. He and she ventured deeper into the cave while he asked, is there anything else you want, as a goblin watched them from behind a rock. The goblin leaped forward with its mouth wide open and a weapon raised to attack. Her eyes widened sharply as she reacted to the incoming attack. Pokryong turned and swung her staff, leaving a trail of fire along the ground that struck the goblin. They continued walking side by side. She looked up and said, what I want, he replied, yeah, like Hongyo or Ramba. Hongyo lifted weights with a blank expression while Ramba hugged a piece of bread happily. Jinwoo held up a finger with a smile, gesturing toward them as he spoke. Pokryong hugged her staff tightly and hesitated. Jinwoo said, speak freely, anything at all. She closed her eyes with a gentle smile and said, I'm already very happy to be helping Lord Jinwoo as I am now. He placed a hand over his heart with a touched expression. He patted her head repeatedly while laughing and saying, come on, tell me at least one thing, like something you'd like to eat. He leaned forward slightly with a calm smile, saying that normally, summons didn't need to eat. Pokryong sat at a table with everyone while he said he ate with people often. She took a bite of pizza next to Hongyo while he said that seeing Ramba so obsessed with cake meant they did have a sense of taste. Jinwoo held a piece of pizza in his hand and said he couldn't selfishly eat delicious food alone while leaving them by themselves. Pokryong stood opposite Jinwoo in the cave. He looked at her and wondered, out of everything she had eaten, what was the best? A strawberry cake slice appeared, and he said she was a bit shy, so she probably liked desserts. Jinwoo smiled while she said there was one thing. He looked at her and asked what it was. A plate of fried chicken and a glass of beer appeared while she held her staff and reacted in surprise, saying, fried chicken. He stood facing her and said, right, then Pokryong, what skill are you planning to learn next? The stages of explosive dragon secret arts were shown, Yun, transform flame, destroy. She pointed with her staff and said, Dragon Mage Secret Arts, Yun. She gripped the staff with both hands and smiled brightly as Jinwoo said, then, the day you master that skill, we'll take a day off from special training. She closed her eyes with an excited smile as Jinwoo faced her and said, yeah, that day we'll have a chicken party for the whole group. She replied, I'd love that, I'll work hard so I can get a break. Two versions of her stood side by side to compare. Chicken mattered less than resting. While Jinwoo watched with a sweat drop, thinking she was even more excited about resting than the chicken. The empty cave was illuminated by rays of light. Jinwoo said, "Well, it doesn't matter. The important thing was having motivation to try hard at anything." The scene shifted to the three of them standing on the ground, looking toward excavators and buildings. Someone said, "Oh." Jia stood with her arms crossed between two men. Byung-jin asked how she even found a place like this, "Ma'am." She replied that she bought it from her grandfather and would build the Ubiek building right here. She pointed toward the construction site and said this part would be the office, while that side would be dorms and apartments exclusively for staff. She stood with her back turned next to Byung-jin and said she would build an underground bunker beneath all the buildings. He looked at her and asked, "Underground bunker?" She replied, "That's right." She recalled Jinwoo saying all he needed to worry about was protecting his family well. She thought she must keep her promise at all costs. Jia stood with one hand on her hip, her hair blowing in the wind. The vacant land spread out under the sky. She thought since he liked open spaces, putting the training ground over there would be perfect. Byung-jin turned his head slightly when she asked, "Did Byung-jin get the summon I mentioned?" He replied, "Yes, ma'am." A glowing wolf appeared in blue energy as it stepped forward. "This is the shadow wolf as you requested." Byung-jin stood next to the sitting wolf and asked, "Why this summon?" While the other two stood opposite him, Jia crossed her arms and smiled, saying she had someone to give it to. The scene shifted to many people sitting at tables in a restaurant. Pieces of meat sizzled on the grill, smoke rising while someone called out, "Ah-jin." Ah-jin smiled as two girls reacted excitedly to the food, saying it was delicious and asking if they were really being treated at such a fancy place. Ah-jin replied, "Of course, order whatever you want." She held her chopsticks and smiled gently when her friends said top players were really something else. Her eyes were zoomed in on as she said, "It's all thanks to my brother." Many glowing items floated in the space, including books, armor, and potions. As the narration said, the amount of items her brother gave her was immense, and many items had top-tier options. The crowd reached out, offering cards toward her while shouting, "The stuff here is the best," and asking to be contacted in advance. If good runes dropped, as the narration said, thanks to him, her number of customers grew rapidly. A hand holding chopsticks stopped in midair when someone asked, "Hey, do you guys know Baek Jinwoo?" The blonde girl smiled and replied, "Yeah, he's really famous lately, and he even broke his own record again." Ah-jin stiffened with anxiety. Ah-jin smiled, closed her eyes, and held her chopsticks while thinking her brother was truly talented, while others said, "At this rate, is he planning to challenge the world record? It's truly amazing." Ah-jin remained with her eyes closed and a blank expression upon hearing, "He's also really handsome, isn't he?" The two girls leaned forward excitedly, smiling and saying he definitely had a girlfriend, right? They were so jealous of his girlfriend. Ah-jin froze, her eyes wide and trembling, thinking, "Handsome, my foot. Is there another Baek Jinwoo I don't know about?" A girl gestured while asking if Baek Jinwoo had an Instagram. Another said he was at Jia's company. So he must be on her follow list, right? Meanwhile, Ah-jin bowed her head, sweating, chewing her food, and saying, "Yeah, whatever you guys think." A girl's eyes widened in surprise. A phone screen was held up displaying an account list. Someone said, "This one." Two girls leaned over the phone with shocked expressions, pointing and saying, "Ah-jin, isn't this your account? How come Jia is following you?" Ah-jin faced them, sweating, and said, "What?" Ah-jin gripped her phone with both hands with a tense expression and said they must have seen it wrong. The phone was held up displaying Jia's profile with the status following, saying she was indeed following her. Ah-jin looked down at the phone with wide eyes and said, "She followed me like a fan. But when did I follow her back?" She looked straight ahead, sweat streaming down her face, while thinking it must be because she was his family member. The two girls sat at the table smiling excitedly, clasping their hands while staring at her. Ah-jin in the foreground sweated nervously and stammered, The girls leaned aggressively across the table toward Ah-jin while shouting, "What's going on? Explain," and asking if they knew each other. Were they close? Ah-jin sat stiffly with a blank expression. A hand gripped a phone held upright as it vibrated violently with a sharp buzz. Ah-jin held the phone with a tense, sweating expression and said, "Wait a second." While the blonde girl beside her clenched her hands excitedly and said, "Tell us." She stared at the phone with a blank expression as a message from Jia appeared. Her eyes widened dramatically while looking at the phone.
Another message from Yu Jia asked if she was free tomorrow. She stood up from her chair, raised her hand, and shouted. Diners around them turned to look. A voice asked what was wrong while a waiter called out, "Ma'am." A quiet street stretched out under the bright sky. A black sedan glided onto the road. Jean trembled as her hands clasped together when a voice said, "It's been a while, hasn't it?" Jia sat behind the wheel, winked playfully, and said, "Get in." Jean blurted out excitedly, "Yes." Jean blurted out excitedly, "Yes." The black sedan pulled away from the curb and drove along the street. Jean nervously wrung her hands and said softly, "So?" Jia drove with a calm smile. Jean sat stiffly beside her in astonishment as she said, "You want to meet my family, right?" Jia replied, "That's right. Jinwoo has been quite busy lately." Jia smiled gently while driving and said, "First, I asked if I could send gifts under Yubek's name, and he said yes." Jean looked at her with sparkling eyes and asked, "Oh, so you're going to give them in person?" Jia replied calmly, "Yeah, because I'm the CEO." Jean sat silently with flushed cheeks, thinking that usually sending by post was enough, wondering how much Jia cared about her brother to come in person. She glanced over with unbelievable jealousy while Jia drove with a confused smile. Jean thought Jia coming in person really made her feel jealous. Jia gripped the steering wheel and asked, "I came without notice, will your parents be bothered?" Jean smiled brightly from the passenger seat and said, "It's fine. I told my parents to stay home today because I had someone I wanted to introduce." She recalled her parents constantly asking about Jinwoo, while she constantly replied that she didn't know anything, not even knowing if he was still alive. Jean crossed her arms, laughed proudly, and declared that Jinwoo was surely the number one in the world for being dense. The black sedan parked beside a humble apartment building under the bright evening sky. The elevator display lit up 5 as the door opened. Jean opened the apartment door, gestured inside, and said, "This is my home." She walked into the house and called out loudly, "Mom, Dad, I'm home." Jia followed with a slightly tense expression. Jia looked around the small living room quietly and thought, "It's small." Her gaze shifted to the simple kitchen and dining table. She looked around with a faint smile and remarked that this was truly a place where people live. Jin's parents stood at the door with surprised expressions. Her father asked, "Jin, you're home." Realizing the guest her daughter had brought home, Yu Jia stood with an elegant smile and said, "Hello." Jin's father stared in astonishment and asked how she had such a beautiful friend. She placed a hand on her chest and politely said, "It's a pleasure to meet you." Jin's parents stood frozen with stunned expressions when Yu Jia introduced herself as being from Ubek. They repeated her name in disbelief. Steam rose from a coffee cup on the table when a trembling voice asked if all of this was real. Jin's parents sat stiffly at the table in total shock when they realized Jinwoo was a famous player and the woman in front of them was the CEO of his company, and also from the Daesung Group. Jia smiled calmly across the table and said, "Yes, I'm visiting you as the CEO of Ubek." Jin's parents panicked with an overwhelmed expression, calling her a VIP guest in their cramped home. Jin quietly realized that her parents still saw her that way. Jia addressed Jin's father formally, which made him startle in a panic and reply nervously. With a calm expression, Jia explained that according to the contract, Ubek had a duty to take care of both him and his wife. Jin's parents looked blankly in disbelief and repeated, "Us?" Jia pushed a thick Ubek document folder across the table and politely asked them to look at it. When opened, the pages clearly stated protection services, a new home, living expenses, medical care, and comprehensive support from Ubek for every need. Her parents' eyes widened in surprise as they read the benefits, until one line stood out, monthly living expense support of 10 million. Completely overwhelmed, they could barely believe the number and asked if it was real. Jia smiled warmly, signaled for reassurance, and told them to go ahead and accept it without hesitation, while Jin sat nearby, also stunned by the scale of what Jia was offering. Jia calmly told Jin's parents that compared to Baek Jinwoo's achievements, this support package was actually very small. She smiled brightly and said she had also prepared some small gifts, which made her parents, already overwhelmed, even more panicked. A holographic storage window appeared in front of Jia. She explained that Jinwoo told her Jin's father really liked summon creatures. A holographic storage window appeared in front of Jia. She explained that Jinwoo told her Jin's father really liked summon creatures. A stream of blue light erupted in the room as a summon creature appeared before everyone. It was a diamond golem, a B-rank summon. Jia explained it was about the same size as a pebble golem but much stronger. The cute crystal golem happily posed for Jin's father. His eyes sparkled with excitement, he was moved, thanked her, and said he never expected to receive something like this thanks to his son. Jia turned to Jin's mother and said she had also prepared a gift for her.
Her mother stood stunned that she was also receiving a gift. Jia turned to Jin's mother and said she had also prepared a gift for her. Her mother stood stunned that she was also receiving a gift. Her mother was instantly captivated by the cute little creature, gently holding it in her hands while blushing with happiness. Jin watched it all in astonishment and joked that her parents were so lucky. Jin startled when Jia calmly told her that there was a gift for her too. A giant white wolf appeared, surrounded by dark blue energy, its glowing eyes looking straight ahead majestically. Jin stepped back with trembling hands, her eyes wide with disbelief at what she was seeing. She shouted in astonishment at the shadow wolf sitting in front of her. Jia smiled and said Jin Woo knew she would like it. Jin burst into tears, hugging the shadow wolf tightly, and joked about asking for a refund later, while her parents were still stunned, wondering if they were really receiving all these gifts. She excitedly promised to tell her brother to treat her parents even better. Jia covered her mouth and laughed elegantly, gently calling Jin cute. Jin's mother worriedly insisted that they couldn't accept so much and suggested they all have a meal together. Jia happily agreed and said she had already thought of a restaurant. A traditional restaurant lay under the bright sky. The family sat together in the restaurant. Someone remarked that Jin Woo used to play games every day instead of studying, but now it had paid off. Jin's parents smiled at each other, remembering Jin Woo playing games for a long time and that once he was obsessed with something, he dove into it extremely seriously. Jin laughed while eating and said everyone was blowing her brother's accomplishments out of proportion, achieving everything in just 1 year. Jia drank quietly beside her. Her eyes widened sharply when Jin's father corrected Jin. Jin Woo has actually been playing for at least 10 years. Jia leaned forward, surprised, and asked Jin's father if Jin Woo had really been playing for 10 years. Jin looked to the side with an unbelievable expression. Jin's father crossed his arms on the table and recalled, unsure, that Jin Woo probably started playing since middle school. Jin's father stood quietly in Jin Woo's dark room. Jin Woo was dozing off at his desk. He recalled sneaking a check on the game after finding his son fell asleep while playing. Jin Woo was still sound asleep beside his phone when his father remembered the game's name was Battle of Summoners. Jin Woo stared intently at the device until late. His father worriedly stood behind watching and remembered he continued playing throughout high school. Jin turned to her father with an unbelievable expression and asked loudly if all those stories were true. Jia listened quietly beside them. Jin and Jia fell into a stunned silence upon realizing only one person could play a single game for 10 years. Both sat frozen in their chairs in the heavy atmosphere. In their minds, they thought Jin Woo might just be that legendary player. A cloaked figure appeared behind Jin Woo as energy swirled around him, and the name God Jin Woo flashed in that moment of tense realization. Sunlight bathed the apartment complex as a peaceful morning began. Jin Woo sat cross-legged in his room with a large inventory window floating before him. The inventory was overflowing with leveled-up summons like the Titanium Golem, Frost Cat, Horned Fairy, Wind Falcon, and Lava Drakes. The inventory was overflowing with leveled-up summons like the Titanium Golem, Frost Cat, Horned Fairy, Wind Falcon, and Lava Drakes. He picked up his phone and decided to contact Jia. He messaged Jia saying he planned to challenge an intermediate dungeon next week and asked if they should prepare to record it. Jia immediately replied that she had been waiting for this news for a long time. Jin Woo stared at his phone in surprise as the ping notification disappeared instantly. Jia excitedly told Jin Woo that he just needed to suit up and clear the dungeon as before, since the entire marketing strategy was already prepared. A massive promotional advertisement popped up, featuring a video of the discounted dungeon clear and strategy guides. Jin Woo stared blankly, wondering when on earth she had prepared all of this. He sent a brief reply saying that sounded great, then decided that leaving the marketing to Jia was the right call. Jin happily hugged her wolf while telling Jin Woo how amazing it was and that Jia had given it to her personally. Jia smiled from across the table as Jin Woo recalled hearing Jin say that Jia had even visited their home in person. Jin hugged the wolf tight, tears welling up in her eyes while her parents stood behind her in astonishment. A faint smile spread across Jin Woo's face as he realized that everything was indeed quite different compared to dealing with the government. Holding his phone, Jin Woo quietly thought that joining Ubek had been the right decision. 1 week later, flames and debris exploded across the battlefield as a giant enemy collapsed before Jin Woo and Pokryong. The system window announced the dungeon clear with a completion time of 6 minutes and 27 seconds. Jin Woo crossed his arms and smiled with satisfaction after having just finished another intermediate dungeon. The press and online articles were flooded with news asking who exactly Jin Woo was. Stories of the records he broke were spreading everywhere, but Jinwoo said he didn't care much for those things. His expression sharpened in silence as his attention shifted to another matter. Pokryong hovered beside Jinwoo, staff in hand, admitting that she still hadn't truly grasped the Yun skill. Pokryong stared straight ahead with a confused expression and asked why this kept happening. Jinwoo realized that she had been acting strangely lately. Arms crossed beneath a tree, Hongyo remarked that Pokryong seemed to be up to something. Sitting nearby with a bewildered look, Jinwoo asked what he meant, and Hongyo explained that Pokryong's mana and control should have been enough to use Yun by now. Staring straight ahead in silence, Hongyo said that if the skill wasn't manifesting, it meant Pokryong was deliberately suppressing it. Still confused, Jinwoo asked if Pokryong really had a reason to do that. The summon pointed out that lately, Jinwoo had only been taking Pokryong into dungeons, which Jinwoo silently acknowledged was true. Jinwoo looked at him with a blank expression. Hongyo guessed that Pokryong simply liked the attention. A girl hugged a small summon to her chest while Hongyo explained that all summons instinctively craved attention from their player. Watching Jinwoo from afar, Pokryong feared that if she progressed too quickly, their relationship might change. Clutching her shirt, Pokryong worriedly thought that she might not get to go into dungeons alone with Jinwoo anymore. Jinwoo stared straight ahead in silence, letting out a soft sigh of contemplation. Giving a wry smile beside Hongyo, Jinwoo admitted that the situation was messy but also strangely touching. As leaves drifted in the wind, Jinwoo asked what they should do next. Hongyo suggested changing the training method, pointing forward with a confident smile and saying he had a good idea. Under the orange sunset sky, someone suddenly called out Jinwoo's name, causing him and Hongyo to look over in surprise. Beaming with a radiant smile, Pokryong had finally mastered the Yun skill, hitting level 42 and unlocking Explosive Dragon Secret Arts, Yun, which allowed her to accumulate Explosive Dragon Wave. Staring ahead in amazement, Jinwoo admitted that he had been skeptical at first, but Hongyo's plan had actually worked. In a chibi-style explanation, Hongyo told Jinwoo to stop taking Pokryong into dungeons until she learned Yun, while Jinwoo awkwardly wondered if that would really work. Jinwoo gave a faint smile and admitted that regardless, Hongyo's perspective was certainly one of a kind. With a fairy sitting on his head, Jinwoo hummed softly to himself. Jinwoo rubbed Pokryong's head and praised her for her hard work, and she happily thanked him. Looking down at Pokryong with a gentle smile, Jinwoo admitted he might have scolded her for playing games. Pokryong smiled brightly when he realized the summon just wanted something like a mission, so fulfilling it wouldn't hurt. He chuckled to himself. Jinwoo said Pokryong just wanted to be with him more, so he couldn't stay mad for long. Then he pulled out a black card and said, "Alright." Holding up the black card with a smile, Jinwoo declared that since Pokryong had succeeded, they would take a break from training today and have a fried chicken party. Grabbing the card happily, Jinwoo thanked Jia, after she had explained that the card could be used for living expenses with a limit of 1 billion per year. Jinwoo suddenly froze as the phrase break from training echoed in his mind. Hongyo stared straight ahead in total shock as the word break hung over his head. Looking at the tired summons in silence, Jinwoo realized that Hongyo couldn't live without training. Clearing his throat, Jinwoo said it was best to set clear rules from now on. Pokryong and Ramba's eyes lit up with excitement when Jinwoo announced that whenever someone learned a new skill, they would take a day off and have a party. Hongyo stared straight ahead in a panic while Pokryong and Ramba celebrated behind him. He blurted out, "But my lord." Jinwoo faced Hongyo and reminded him that rest was also a form of training, emphasizing that team unity was just as important. Hongyo's eyes suddenly lit up with excitement, and he loudly agreed that unity was a form of training, while Jinwoo secretly thought he was a simple soul. Hongyo's eyes suddenly lit up with excitement, and he loudly agreed that unity was a form of training, while Jinwoo secretly thought he was a simple soul. The group gathered around the party while Jinwoo stood nearby, and even the summons happily ate together. Pokryong's eyes widened as she looked at the fried chicken in her hand and chirped that it was delicious. Ramba happily took a small sip from a tiny cup beside Hongyo. Watching the party with a smile, Jinwoo checked in on the others. One summon gave a happy thumbs up while eating, and Jinwoo quietly remarked that everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. Jinwoo turned toward the sunset, thinking that the minimal preparations were now complete. With a serious expression, Jinwoo decided it was time to enter the trial tower. The trial tower appeared as the game's endgame content, filled with treasures, rare gear, and rewards far beyond anything found in normal dungeons. But it came with a price. The narrative warned that the tower's brutal difficulty had claimed countless lives, making it a true graveyard for players. Sitting across from Jinwoo in the meeting room, Jia reacted with a stunned expression. "What?" A bead of sweat rolled down her face as she asked if he was really planning to enter the trial tower. Jinwoo calmly confirmed it, saying he only intended to challenge up to the 10th floor this time. Recalling that even national rankers had never reached that far, she hesitated and said that was true. But images of fallen players flashed through her mind as she explained that countless people had died trying to conquer that floor, and even the rankers who managed to survive described it as hell. Facing Jin Woo across the table, she asked one last time if he was sure, and he calmly replied that he had intended to start around this time anyway. Looking at Jin Woo sitting so calmly across from her, she thought that anyone who could be so relaxed while preparing to enter such a dangerous place had to be God Jin Woo. Remembering he had once climbed to the 100th floor, she realized the first floor of the trial tower must be child's play to him. A cloaked figure stood with their back to Jin Woo as a reminder that they had agreed to act oblivious until he volunteered the information. Around the dining table, the group remarked that Jin Woo didn't like attracting attention and had even asked them to keep it a secret from his family. In a comedic scene, Jia enthusiastically declared that she would be waiting for Jin Woo, which made him look visibly flustered. With a surprised expression, she heard Jin Woo say that he didn't plan to wear any recording equipment this time. Jin Woo clasped his hands and listened as Jia asked about selling the information, but he firmly refused. The fairy mage and swordsman appeared together as the narration explained that an EX rank was naturally necessary to conquer the trial tower. However, communication skills were the next most important factor. The mute fairy threw a dramatic tantrum while Jin Woo sighed that if his teammates couldn't talk, it would slow down their progress. Jia rested her chin on her hand, deciding that besides information, there were still plenty of other things to sell, and they should prioritize Jin Woo's wishes first. She agreed to let Jin Woo do whatever made him most comfortable, and he thanked her for her understanding. Wringing his hands, Jin Woo hesitated and said it might not be a worthy trade, but she leaned forward in her chair and asked if she could ask him for a favor as well. Jin Woo repeated in surprise, "A favor?" She informed Jin Woo that the national representative selection tournament would take place in 2 months. Rubbing his chin in thought, Jin Woo remembered she was talking about the selection tournament. As images of fighters and monsters appeared, Jin Woo confirmed it was the tournament used to select the national team for the World League. A glowing shield appeared with an announcement that those selected would have the right to participate in the tournament held at the end of the year. Crossing his arms, Jin Woo asked if someone who didn't belong to an official guild or headquarters could participate in the tournament. Jia smiled across the table and explained that even though Ubek wasn't an official guild yet, they could still participate with a recommendation letter from a council member. A chibi-style scene appeared as she recalled Judge Cha Suk suggesting Jin Woo should become a national representative directly. Jin Woo's expression turned serious as he said he could pass the selection round without much difficulty. Dark silhouettes of strong opponents surrounded him as Jin Woo remarked that world rankers were still tough opponents with his current strength. A faint smile appeared on his face as he quietly added that this was only true for the present. Surrounded by intense flames, Pokryong appeared as Jin Woo pointed out that there were still 8 months left in the year. If she learned predation in that time, she could even go up against world rankers. Jia smiled brightly and said with excitement that joining the national team would come with a lot of support. Jin Woo knew the government didn't spare expenses for top players. Hearing this, he admitted he was looking for money to get another EX rank summon. Piles of towering summon scrolls appeared as Jin Woo immediately asked how much support a national representative actually received. His eyes widened in shock to hear that top performers could even receive priceless ultimate summon scrolls. Leaning forward with interest, Jia listened as Jin Woo quickly agreed to enter the selection round. She could hardly believe he had agreed so easily, and the two shook hands to confirm the deal. Smiling brightly, Jia thanked Jin Woo for accepting. Still holding her hand, Jin Woo sat in silence while she continued to smile at him. Across the table, he simply replied, "All right." While the two kept their hands locked in an enthusiastic handshake, a fiery staff with a glowing red core rose amidst a swirl of flames. While the two kept their hands locked in an enthusiastic handshake, a fiery staff with a glowing red core rose amidst a swirl of flames. Pokryong hesitated and replied, "Why yes." A close-up of her eyes and the sweat on her face revealed her obvious tension. Turning her back to Jin Woo and clutching her staff, she nervously said there was something she needed to tell him. Her hands clenched tight around the staff, she hesitantly began, actually, looking away in embarrassment. She admitted that she liked going into dungeons with Jin Woo so much that she had pretended it was hard to learn Yun. She apologized, saying she was sure the others wanted to be with him too, and Jin Woo stood silently in the cave, listening to her confession. Seeing the tears in Pokryong's eyes, Jin Woo thought that rewarding her instead of scolding her might have been what made her feel guilty. He gently placed a hand on her head and said, "No, Pokryong." Smiling as he ruffled her hair, Jin Woo told her not to blame herself so much. He was actually very grateful she had told him, and right now, she was the person he needed most. Pokryong's eyes widened in surprise at his words. She listened as Jin Woo said it was only natural that he spent the most time with her. Facing each other, Pokryong hesitantly asked if that was really true, and Jin Woo smiled and answered, "Yeah." With a happy smile, Jin Woo began to explain why, and clutching her staff, Pokryong listened as Jin Woo reminded her that she was an EX rank summon. Jin Woo laughed as his other summons gathered around him, saying he valued the dungeon team too, but none compared to an EX rank. Jinwoo gave a wry smile as the others clamored for him to keep taking them into dungeons. Jinwoo asked Pokryong if she was used to Yun now, and she confidently replied that it was enough for now. With a faint smile, Jinwoo said that was enough for today and declared that tomorrow they would immediately challenge the trial tower. A massive tower soared high into the dark sky as he announced their next destination, the trial tower.